LoveLore Library. Chapter 252. Seeing such a scene, Huzi said in a low voice, "This is quite a grand occasion." Master Zhong felt an inexplicable sense of pride. Of course. The boss had always been a quiet person, but when she was the boss, she was an outstanding decision-maker. Now that she was the saintess, she was naturally an outstanding saintess as well. The time has come. At this moment, someone sang loudly, followed by ceremonial music. Amidst the pitter-patter of rain, Qin Yining, dressed in a snow-white muslin dress, slowly walked out of the hall, surrounded by 8 grey-clothed Taoist nuns. Behind her, the young emperor, dressed in a bright yellow dragon robe, walked out of the hall. Seeing this scene, the commoners all knelt down and shouted, "Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor! Long live the emperor!" Yu Qiyan's heart was filled with lofty sentiments. He felt a great sense of satisfaction as he pointed at the country and encouraged the people with his words. He raised his hand and his gaze fell on Qin Yining, who had already walked to the incense burner table. Qin Yining took out 3 incense sticks, lit them, and inserted them into the incense burner. Then, she formed a Taoist finger gesture that she had just learned. Her white, slender fingers danced in the air. Coupled with her snow-white dress, her finger gestures were extremely beautiful and inexplicably divine. The most shocking thing was that the 3 incense sticks were burning at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, they were all gone. Disciple of the Qin clan kowtows to the God of Heaven. May the God of Heaven show us the right path. As soon as she finished speaking, nearly 100 Taoist nuns could be heard chanting Taoist scriptures in low voices. The women's voices were like ripples that spread out in circles, making the originally sacred scene even more solemn. Huzi, Master Zhong, and Mu Jinghu saw Qin Yining, dressed in white, and the 8 Taoist nuns behind her, walking in an orderly yet strange manner. They waved their wide sleeves and danced. Their arms swung in the same arc, and every turn they took was the same pace. Qin Yining's dress fluttered in the wind, as if she was about to be blown away by the wind. The scene was so strange, but it also had a sacred beauty. Huzi clicked his tongue inwardly. His future princess consort had learned how to dance. And now, the people really had no intention of disrespecting the holy maiden. After witnessing the burning of the 3 incense sticks in the incense burner, and seeing such a sacred and beautiful dance, everyone put their hands together and prayed in their hearts. Qin Yining was so nervous that he almost made a wrong step. This was what he had learned in a hurry just now. Fortunately, she had a photographic memory. She remembered the movements after seeing it once. Although she was unfamiliar with it, the commoners were all amateurs. She could handle it. When they finally reached the last few steps, all 9 of them put their foreheads on the ground and bowed to the altar. At the side, a Taoist nun lit a talisman and began to chant. In the drizzle, the talisman paper burned even brighter than usual. A gust of wind blew, and the half-burned talisman paper was blown into the air, then burned to ashes. This scene made the commoners feel that the gods must have sensed their sincerity. When a Taoist nun reminded him in a low voice, Qin Yining stood up and kowtowed, "Many thanks to God for pointing out the right path. This disciple is endlessly grateful." Hearing Qin Yining's words, the commoners all let out a sigh of relief and looked at the altar with hope. The Yu Qiyan had witnessed the entire process. Up until now, the image of Qin Yining's slender waist and fluttering skirt kept flashing in front of his eyes. It was as if a ball of fire had been lit in his heart. Qin Yining stood up. The 100 Taoist nun retreated to the side like Moses parting the sea, making way for the Yu Qiyan. The Yu Qiyan walked down the red carpet and walked in front of Qin Yining. The commoners could only see the young emperor's elegant and calm demeanor. They could also see the emperor and the holy maiden talking in a low voice. The emperor's face was full of smiles, while the holy maiden respectfully looked down and replied. This scene was very beautiful and pleasing to the eye. Some of the commoners whispered, "The emperor is so handsome. He and the holy maiden are a match made in heaven." Yes. If not for us, the emperor would have married the holy maiden a long time ago for the sake of the stability of the Dian dynasty. Isn't that so? The holy maiden was originally going to be the empress. For us, she can only cultivate. The commoners were all talking at once. Their hearts were filled with gratitude towards the emperor and the holy maiden. However, deep down, they still felt that this pair was extremely compatible. Master Zhong felt honored when he heard this. His boss's talent was more than enough to be the empress. At least these commoners knew what was good for them. However, Huzi was so angry that his nose was about to become crooked. How could that brainless fool be compared to his Wang Yi? Only Qin Yining was worthy of a hero like Wang Yi, who was skilled in both civil and military matters. Were these commoners blind? Were they stupid? They must have said that because they had never seen Wang Yi's heroic appearance. However, a cowardly and stupid emperor had already intimidated them. If they saw Wang Yi, wouldn't they immediately kneel down and call him immortal? Yu Qiyan and Qin Yining were actually just chatting. Yu Qiyan said in a low voice, "Your dance is very beautiful. We didn't even know that you could dance." Qin Yining also whispered, "Your Majesty, that was not a dance. This subject's daughter does not know how to dance. I was only forced to do so." Yu Qiyan whispered again, "How did that incense burn so quickly?" "That was a special incense bought from a swindler. It burns so quickly. I specially found it to support the occasion." Just as the two of them were talking, the rain that had been falling for nearly an hour gradually stopped. The wind blew the dark clouds away. The sky actually cleared up and a rainbow appeared in the sky. Qin Yining and Yu Qiyan raised their heads to look at the rainbow. Both of them were stunned. Qin Yining thought, "This rainbow came at the perfect time." Yu Qiyan, on the other hand, thought, "It seems that Qin Yining does indeed have the ability to protect the fate of the nation. Everything that she solves never fails. Now that there is a rainbow in the sky, it means that she is favored by the heavens." At this moment, the commoners were full of smiles. Originally, it was just a natural rainbow after the rain. Now, in the eyes of the commoners, it seemed to be glowing with a golden light. Qin Yining took a few steps back and stood beside the Taoist nuns. Yu Qiyan, on the other hand, wanted to continue her act. He said loudly, "Everyone, Taoist Master Xuanzu has already told us the method to inform us of the heavens. We will follow this method from now on and will definitely solve everyone's food problem." The commoners were overjoyed. Some of them even cried in excitement. Everyone kowtowed and shouted, "Long live the emperor!" Yu Qiyan returned to the palace. The imperial bodyguards and the imperial guards began to organize the commoners to leave the courtyard. The commoners came full of hope and left happily. In this ceremony, the sky cleared up after the rain, pushing the whole process to a new level of holiness. Outside the courtyard, Mu Jinghu said, "I won't go back with you. I still have to fulfill my promise. That emperor is very interested in the fox's wife. It's better to be careful." Huzi cupped his hands towards Mu Jinghu. "Thank you for your trouble, young Master Mu." Mu Jinghu also cupped his hands in return. Then, he turned around and disappeared into the crowd. Master Zhong and Huzi left together. The courtyard, which had been bustling with noise just now, had now regained its silence. Li Yanyan, who had witnessed the whole process, was already frowning and clenching her fists. She didn't even realize that her fingernails were digging into her palms. For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 253. In the main hall, Qin Huayuan and Duke Ongwa Li Mian had been waiting for a long time. When they saw the emperor and Qin Yining enter, they both came forward to greet the Yuqi Yan. At this time, the Yuqi Yan was still immersed in the excitement of the people's obedience and the auspicious signs from the heavens. When he saw the two people, his face was no longer gloomy as it was when he was worried about money. He waved his hand and said in a light tone, "You may dispense with the formalities." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Qin Huayuan and Duke Ongwa stood up and retreated. The Yuqi Yan turned around and smiled at Qin Yining. He gently said, "The auspicious signs from the heavens today are all thanks to you." Qin Yining didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was normal for a rainbow to appear after the rain. Why would the emperor see it as an auspicious sign? Wasn't this too superstitious? Qin Yining hurriedly knelt down and saluted. "This subject's daughter doesn't deserve such praise. The auspicious signs from the heavens are because of the Holy Lord of the Dian. This subject's daughter is only a small woman. Moreover, this subject's metaphysics is something that I learned on the spot. You also know that I don't have the ability to cause auspicious signs from the heavens." The words "learned on the spot" made the Yuqi Yan laugh uncontrollably. The Yuqi Yan's love for Qin Yining had risen to a new level. Even though she didn't have any romantic feelings for him, she was loyal to the emperor. She didn't use her identity as the Holy Lady to deceive him. Instead, she told him the truth early on. What was true and what was false in order to appease the people. For the newly ascended Yuqi Yan, Qin Yining's honesty and Qin Huayuan's outstanding intelligence were his greatest support. In addition, he had Prince Ning, who was willing to sacrifice his life for the country, and his father-in-law, Duke Ongwa Li Mian, who was sincere and loyal. For the first time since ascending the throne, the Yuqi Yan felt that he wasn't alone as the emperor. Perhaps he could fight against the fierce army of Dezhou. "No matter what, you have done a great service. You helped me appease the people and even thought of a way to solve my food problem. Tell me, how should we reward you?" Yuqi Yan supported Qin Yining with both hands. Her voice was gentle and cheerful, especially when she dragged out the last word, Her voice was slightly nasal and contained a bit of affection. Dukan lowered his head, and his ears twitched. Qin Huayuan lowered his head and frowned, not reacting at all. Qin Yining took 2 steps back and saluted with Taoist etiquette, saying, "Your Majesty bestowing Chenna the Xuanzu Monastery to meditate is already a reward. Chenna does not dare to ask for more." Qin Yining's words clearly had a double meaning. He was telling the emperor, "You didn't force me to marry you. You gave me a separate courtyard to cultivate in seclusion, and I thank you for that." But Yuqi Yan didn't understand the deeper meaning in her words at all. He smiled and said, "I still need to think about how to bestow it to you. Ordinary yellow and white items are too tacky." Qin Yining lowered her head. She hated that she couldn't tell Yuqi Yan, "I'm just a common person. If you really want to reward me, it'd be good to give me more gold." But she really couldn't say this. She could only do her best to retreat and reduce her presence. Yuqi Yan looked at her with appreciation for a moment, then turned around and said, "Guozhang, Minister Qin, follow me back to the palace to discuss important matters." "As you wish." Yuqi Yan reluctantly looked at Qin Yining one last time, then led the crowd to leave. Qin Yining respectfully bowed and sent him off. Only when he left did she act like a Daoist and left the front hall with Ji Yun and Qiu Lu. During this time, all the Daoist nuns they met bowed and retreated, calling her Shizuan. Qin Yining politely nodded in response. It wasn't until they went up the long flight of steps, entered the Chuehua Gate, and went straight up to the rear courtyard that was halfway up the mountain that Qin Yining finally let out a long sigh of relief. Her tense back also relaxed. She muttered, "It's finally been resolved." Yes, it's finally been resolved without any mishaps. Ji Yun and Qiu Lu were also covered in sweat. The three of them returned to their room. Just as they were about to change their clothes, someone came in from outside and said, reporting to Daoist, "There's an important guest outside." Qin Yining's hands that were about to change her clothes stopped. "Who's here?" Reporting to Daoist, this subordinate doesn't want to announce the arrival of an important guest. Daoist, please go out and welcome them. An important guest that could make the imperial bodyguards keep quiet out of fear. Qin Yining had already guessed a bit. She quickly got up and went downstairs. She quickly walked to the center of the square and knelt down. She loudly said, "This subject respectfully welcomes the Empress." Li Yanyan had been standing at the corner with her personal attendants, Nanny Li, Laurel, and Yu Ji, the great eunuch Lu Bao, and dozens of palace servants. They were waiting for Qin Yining to personally welcome them before they were willing to come in. According to Nanny Li and Lu Bao's advice, since this coquettish woman had an unspeakable matter with the emperor, she must be very guilty. They didn't allow the imperial bodyguards to announce their identities in order to see her guilty expression when she first saw the empress. Who knew that this person would be so smart, kneeling from a distance to welcome them? Could it be that the imperial bodyguards told her? Li Yanyan looked at the imperial bodyguard with dignity. Qin Yining was one step ahead of her to help the imperial bodyguard out of this predicament. She said, replying to Nyang, "This subject guessed Nyang's identity first. This subject respectfully welcomes Nyang for 1,000 years." The imperial bodyguard looked at Qin Yining gratefully and then retreated. Li Yanyan smiled, her eyes shining brightly. Now that she saw Qin Yining being so considerate, wasn't this a method to win people's hearts? Looking at her pure white clothes, which made her look like a fairy, and thinking back to the harmonious scene when she and the emperor looked at each other in the square, as well as the common people's comments about them being a talented man and a beautiful woman and a match made in heaven, Li Yanyan felt as if she was being roasted over a fire. She and the emperor were a deeply affectionate couple. If Qin Yining and the emperor were a match made in heaven, then what was she? "Stand up." Li Yanyan's voice was cold. She used a bit of effort to control her temper and not scream in front of Qin Yining. At this time, Qin Yining was already being stared at by Li Yanyan like there was a thorn in her back. That strong hostility was even stronger than that of the wild beasts in the mountains. It made her entire body tense up. Although she and Li Yanyan weren't close in the past, at least it wasn't to the point where they hated each other. Who would have thought that when they met again after being conferred the title of Empress, she would hold such great hostility towards her? How sensitive was Qin Yining? She immediately guessed the reason. If Pang Xiao thought about someone else after marrying her, she would probably have the heart to kill him. Thinking about it like this, it was really good that Li Yanyan could still maintain her demeanor. And she was forced to become a vixen in the eyes of others. It was really unjust. "Many thanks, Empress Nyang." Qin Yining stood up and respectfully stood to the side. She expressed her respectful and humble attitude. "The weather is hot. Would Nyang like to have tea in the hall?" Seeing her attitude, Li Yanyan was even angrier. She was so humble, wasn't she guilty? In any case, when a person has a prejudice against another person, no matter what the other person does, it is wrong. Li Yanyan entered the hall with a cold face. Mama Li and the head eunuch Lu Bao supported her on the left and right. When they passed by Qin Yining, they snorted coldly and looked at her from the corner of their eyes as if they were looking at trash. Chapter 254. Qin Yining followed the Empress up the red stairs. When no one was looking, he quickly glanced at Qiu Lu. Qiu Lu was stunned at first, then she understood and stopped. She retreated without leaving a trace. When everyone had entered the main hall, she turned and walked quickly to the Chuihua gate. She first went to find the 4 boxers that Qin Huayuan had arranged. Qin Yining personally brought tea to Li Yanyan. He smiled and said, "There are only some Longjing tea here before the rain. It can't be compared to the tea before the rain. Please don't mind." Li Yanyan took the plain white teacup and put it on the square table beside her. Her right hand, which was wearing a golden armor, picked up the lid of the teacup and played with it. Her eyes, which were full of hostility, fell on Qin Yining. "It seems that you are living well here. Didn't you come to pray for the country's cultivation? Why don't you focus on cultivation? Why do you have the mind to care whether this tea is before the rain or before the rain?" Qin Yining's smile faded. He said gently, "Even cultivation needs to survive. If drinking tea can affect cultivation, I'm afraid that people outside the cultivation world would have banned tea a long time ago. Does the Empress think that cultivators shouldn't drink tea? You have a glib tongue." The Empress's hand that was playing with the lid loosened. The white porcelain lid fell on the teacup with a ding sound. A few drops of tea splashed on the back of the Empress's hand. "The tea is too hot. I am not like Shinrin Xuanzu who has immortal flesh and bones. I can't protect the fate of the country, so I don't have the ability to protect myself. I can't drink such hot tea like you." Qin Yining's eyes turned cold. The tea was the perfect temperature to drink. It seemed that the Empress really hated her to the bone. Qin Yining's smile was still on his face, but he had put away his initial respectful attitude. She could see that even if she gave in, the Empress's impression of her would not change. Then she had no need to show weakness. She was not a soft persimmon that could be easily beaten. She was the daughter of the family Qin. She would not be looked down upon by others. "Your Majesty is right." Qin Yining's voice was gentle, but her words were full of sarcasm. "This subject's daughter doesn't know much about the way of tea, but I didn't expect that the tea I brewed would be so unpalatable. It seems that people of different statuses should do the things of different statuses. Brewing tea should still be left to the servant girls." Turning around, she instructed Ji Yun, "Go brew tea for Nyang Nyang again." Ji Yun smiled and agreed, then went to make tea again. Li Yanyan's face was ashen. What did he mean? Was Qin Yining scolding her for failing to appreciate his kindness, or was he scolding her for not being worthy of his position? Li Yanyan's face turned completely cold. Where did she get the guts to be so arrogant? Wasn't it all because of the Emperor's favor? This consort only said that the tea was too hot and you dare to not serve me. It seems that not only do you not know the way of tea, you have also forgotten the rules. Your Majesty is right. In this servant's opinion, Daoist Xuanzu hasn't been home for long and hasn't had time to learn the rules. Head eunuch Lu Bao said with a smile, "In the past, it was rumored that Daoist Xuanzu and little Wang Yi of the Dezhou dynasty were a couple. Little Wang Yi called Daoist Xuanzu's mother-in-law in public and even gave her such a large and valuable garden. If she was a woman with rules, would she accept such a large garden from a man? Yes, but it's just that it's pleasing to the eye." Nanny Li sneered, "She's not a daughter of a noble family who grew up with her parents. What kind of background can your Majesty expect from her?" Hearing this, Li Yanyan burst out laughing and asked curiously, "Are you still in contact with Prince Zhongshuan now?" Asking a question that she already knew the answer to was clearly taking the opportunity to ridicule Qin Yining and poke at his heart. No matter how close they were in the past, if they contacted each other now, it would be treason. Moreover, Qin Yining had been forced to cultivate. Although they could get married in a firehouse, it was still not good for a woman and a man to contact each other. Qin Yining smiled, "It seems that your Majesty came today with the intention of strolling around the main hall. It's just that this subject's daughter was praying for blessings and asking the heavens and exhausted her mind. Now that I'm not feeling well, I'm afraid I can't accompany your Majesty." Your Majesty, please do as you wish. After saying this, Qin Yining bowed to Li Yanyan and went upstairs. Ji Yun also put down the tray and followed closely behind. Li Yanyan finally couldn't bear it anymore and slammed the table. Standing up, Qin Yining. Stop right there for this consort. Qin Yining stopped and didn't turn back. Does your Majesty have any other orders? You're so arrogant, isn't it because you have the Emperor's support? You're cultivating here, yet you still don't forget to seduce the Emperor. Aren't you afraid of being punished by the heavens? Qin Yining turned back and looked calmly at Li Yanyan. However, Li Yanyan couldn't help but be stunned by her icy gaze. Your Majesty, you're still a daughter of a noble family. You know everything in your heart, so why do you have to make things so ugly and ruin your status as the Empress? Such a casual sentence, but to Li Yanyan, it was like a huge mountain was pressing down on her. She did know that it was the Emperor's one-sided love for Qin Yining. And if Qin Yining had wanted to be the Empress in the past, she wouldn't have had anything to do with it now. However, how could she be reconciled to seeing her husband constantly thinking about Qin Yining? It was understandable that the Emperor favored Gu Chang. After all, Gu Chang was the Emperor's concubine and could be considered a concubine. But what was Qin Yining? To put it bluntly, she was an outside concubine at most. As the main wife, she could allow her husband to sleep with a concubine, but she couldn't allow her husband to have an outside concubine. Didn't you say that Ben Gong shouldn't ruin the status of the Empress? Li Yanyan gritted her teeth and said, Someone from the Qin clan has offended Ben Gong and offended her superiors. Capture her for Ben Gong. Yes. There were a few palace attendants that the Empress had brought with her who were skilled in martial arts. They went forward to capture Qin Yining. Ji Yun immediately stood in front of Qin Yining and pushed the palace attendants aside. She scolded, This is a place granted by the Emperor for cultivation. If your Majesty the Empress wants to do anything, please think twice. Li Yanyan, who was in a fit of anger, couldn't bear to hear someone use the Emperor's status to suppress her. Hearing Ji Yun's words, Li Yanyan wasn't afraid. Instead, she became even more jealous. Good. You actually dared to connive with your maidservant to teach this consort a lesson in public. Men, seize them all. The moment the Empress finished speaking, the guards she had brought with her were about to charge in, but they were stopped by the boxer that Qiu Lu had called over and the imperial guards that had been ordered to guard this place. The guards from both sides faced each other with swords drawn. Inside the hall, Ji Yun stood in front of Qin Yining, neither giving way to the Empress. Qin Yining coldly said, I didn't think that the imperial family would bully the weak like this. Today, Your Majesty the Empress wants to accuse me of a crime and arrest me. Is it because of a personal grudge, or does your Li clan have the intention to commit treason? You're slandering me. Li Yanyan was anxious. This accusation was too heavy. How could their Li clan bear it? If your Li clan doesn't have the intention to commit treason, why does Your Majesty the Empress look like she wants to tear me to pieces today? Did Your Majesty forget that I came here to cultivate? Your Majesty hurt me. Could it be that you don't care about the fate of the nation? Li Yanyan's heart skipped a beat. Her heart that had been unable to calm down due to her jealousy finally calmed down. Seeing her dumbstruck, Qin Yining sneered, Your Majesty the Empress, the brain is a good thing. Remember to bring it with you the next time you go out. After saying this, he ignored Li Yanyan and turned to go upstairs. To read a novel, please visit Chapter 255. Li Yanyan looked at Qin Yining's back and gnashed her teeth in hatred. She really wanted to have Qin Yining dragged out and beaten to death. However, the big hat of the Li family's treason made her unable to breathe. She didn't dare to touch Qin Yining at all. Otherwise, she would become a sinner who disregarded the fate of the country. So, you're going against this consort right now, which means that your family Qin is going against my Li family. Li Yanyan chased after a few steps and looked up at Qin Yining on the stairs. She wanted to give him a taste of his own medicine. Qin Yining didn't stop and didn't look back as he said, "Isn't it Nyang Nyang who came to find trouble with this subject's daughter today?" He had already reached the second floor and closed the grill door of the stairwell. Li Yanyan's face immediately turned red. It was unknown whether it was from anger or embarrassment. Nanny Li was furious. As she rushed upstairs, she cursed, "There's actually such a shameless wanton woman in this world." She didn't forget to seduce the emperor when she was cultivating. She actually became arrogant because of his favor and was so disrespectful to the empress. If such a sorcerer is left in this world, wouldn't it ruin the atmosphere of the boudoir? Ji Yun listened until the veins on her forehead popped out. She blocked the stairs and pushed Nanny Li, who was rushing over, back 2 steps. "This Nanny, please clean your mouth. With which eye did you see my Jinren become someone else's concubine? My Jinren comes from a prestigious family and is a proper daughter of a noble family. Furthermore, she came here to cultivate under the imperial edict. This Nanny is slandering my Jinren like this. Are you questioning Tian Jizi's judgment or questioning the emperor's judgment? Master really has a glib tongue. Even a dog's bark is different from other dogs." Nanny Li spat at Ji Yun's face. However, Ji Yun had martial arts on her, so how could she be spat by an old woman? She immediately dodged and said angrily, "My Jinren just set up an altar to summon auspicious signs for the Dian country and for the imperial family's world. I didn't expect the empress to put away the bow after the birds are done and come here to bully people. Is this the empress's idea or the emperor's idea? Who do you think you are? Do you think you have the right to question Ben Gong?" Li Yanyan raised her hand to slap her. She couldn't punish her master, but could it be that she couldn't punish her servant girl? Ji Yun could have easily dodged it, but in a flash, she turned her body sideways and received the slap. She avoided the 2 pure gold armors that the empress was wearing, so her face was not scratched. Only the sound of a slap could be heard echoing in the spacious hall. The door upstairs was pushed open and Qin Yining rushed downstairs in a panic. She pulled Ji Yun behind her and met Li Yanyan's gaze. "Your Majesty the Empress, you're here today to find fault with me and confiscate my property." Li Yanyan met her intimidating gaze and actually didn't dare to look straight at her. She only held on because of her dignity as the Empress and her jealousy. She straightened her neck and said, "As the mother of the nation, this Empress naturally has to set a standard for all the women in the world. Your flirtatious behavior is a disgrace to all the women in the world." "Is that so?" Qin Yining said in a deep voice, "Since this subject girl is so unbearable in Your Majesty the Empress's heart, then this subject girl doesn't deserve to continue staying here to cultivate. Someone, quickly enter the palace and report to His Majesty that I want to return to Qin Manor immediately and ask for His Majesty's permission." "Yes." One of the guards standing outside the hall quickly walked out. It was the one that Qin Yining helped her out just now. Li Yanyan was a bit flustered. She knew that His Majesty liked this woman. If His Majesty appeared, he would definitely favor Qin Yining. However, things had already developed to this point. If she shrank back, wouldn't she be disgraced? She didn't do anything wrong. Qin Yining pulled Ji Yun's hand and took her to the trees to apply medicine. He left the spacious and bright main hall to the Empress and her entourage. When Qin Yining and Ji Yun had walked far away, Nanny Li said worriedly in Li Yanyan's ear, "Nyang Nyang, if this matter is made public, His Majesty may be angry after knowing it. Why don't we go back first? I didn't do anything wrong. Why should I leave first?" The tears in Li Yanyan's eyes finally fell down. Nanny Li took a handkerchief and wiped Li Yanyan's tears with heartache. She continued in a low voice, but Nyang Nyang, that little hussy is eloquent. I'm afraid that she will turn black into white and put all the blame on us. Nyang Nyang, you and His Majesty just got married. Don't make His Majesty unhappy. Won't that affect the relationship between you and His Majesty? That little hussy will take advantage of you for no reason. Li Yanyan sniffled and cried out. She felt much better and calmer. I understand what Nanny means. Don't worry. If she dares to slander me later, I will teach her a lesson. Hearing that Li Yanyan still wanted to wait here for the imperial edict, Nanny Li hurriedly persuaded, Nyang Nyang, it's better to avoid her for now. She is here. Are you afraid that you won't have a chance to deal with her in the future? When Li Yanyan heard this, she hesitated. In fact, she was now regretting why she came face to face with her today. As the Empress, she lowered herself to go against a court lady. Not only did it lower her status, but it was also easy for people to talk about her. What's more, if she wanted to kill Qin Yining, she could use other methods, such as drugging or assassination. Why did she have to let everyone know that she didn't like Qin Yining? No wonder before she got married, her mother repeatedly told her not to be impulsive and to learn how to deal with things calmly. But she showed such a big flaw as soon as she came. The more Li Yanyan thought, the more flustered she became. The anger she couldn't suppress just now disappeared. She slowly nodded and said, it's a good idea to avoid her and then make a decision. That's right. Nanny Li said loudly, Nyang Nyang, you don't feel well. Why don't this servant serve you back to the palace? Li Yanyan held Nanny Li's arm and led the palace servants out of the hall. But at this time, she unexpectedly came face to face with an unexpected person. Emperor, Emperor. Li Yanyan stood in the same place and looked at Yu Qiyan, who came back in front of her. For a moment, she didn't know what to say. It was Nanny Li who pulled her back. Li Yanyan hurriedly knelt down and saluted, this concubine greets Emperor. Yu Qiyan stood with his hands behind his back. He didn't ask Li Yanyan to get up, but asked, why are you here? When Li Yanyan heard this, she felt as if her heart was being cut by a knife. She had to put on a meek and humble appearance, replying to Emperor, this concubine heard that there was an important matter in the courtyard today. So, this concubine specially came to see how Qin Mimi would deal with Wen Tian. Then what did you see clearly? Yu Qiyan looked at her coldly. Emperor, this concubine is slow-witted. This concubine just came to visit Qin Mimi. The visit you speak of is to stand in front of her door, question her ability, and question my judgment. In my opinion, Ongwa Gong didn't teach his daughter well enough. Li Yanyan felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave in an instant. She looked up at Yu Qiyan in disbelief. It should be known that this kind of punishment was more humiliating than a direct slap. Qin Yining and Ji Yun had been kneeling in front of the door for a long time at this time. Yu Qiyan frowned and was about to reach out to help, but Qin Yining knelt down and retreated, Emperor, please leave this concubine a way out. Chapter 256. Yu Qiyan's hand that was about to support Qin Yining froze in midair. He bent over and looked at the black hair of the woman kneeling in front of him. His mood was exceptionally heavy, no less heavy than when he found out that the taxes and money in the national treasury had been hidden away by the Emperor Emeritus. He had finally thought of a way to get the best of both worlds and arrange for her to be in a place that he could reach. Was he going to fail again? He had just left with Qin Huayuan and Nguagong, but his mind was filled with the image of her setting up the altar and inquiring about the heavens. He couldn't wait to see her again and spend some time alone with her. Thus, he came up with an excuse to send the two of them away before he turned back. Who knew that before he returned to his residence, he would run into the imperial bodyguard that was responsible for passing on the message. After asking about what had happened, Yu Qiyan's heart sank. The first thing he thought of was not how to deal with the empress who had ruined his plans, but rather how to keep Qin Yining and how to appease Qin Yining's emotions. But in front of him, Qin Yining was like a bird that had been startled by the twang of a bow. This truly made Yu Qiyan panic. What are you doing? Who won't give you a way out? You. Your Majesty. Qin Yining retreated again and said with her forehead pressed against his, "If your Majesty isn't willing to give this subject's daughter a way out, then please give this subject's death with a piece of white silk." Where did this come from? Get up first. Yu Qiyan stubbornly wanted to help Qin Yining up. Qin Yining retreated and said while kneeling, "Your Majesty, this subject's daughter is endlessly grateful that you have bestowed this subject's daughter to cultivate at the Xuanzu Monastery. This subject's daughter is very happy to be able to do something for the country. However, this subject's daughter has been staying here for a long time and is unavoidably suspicious. Who dares to suspect you? Who dares to speak nonsense? Zhen will definitely take their heads. Don't be like this. Let's talk first, okay?" Yu Qiyan saw that it was useless to support her, so he simply squatted in front of her. However, Qin Yining still refused to raise his head to look at him. He maintained his kneeling posture and said, "Your Majesty, please allow this subject's daughter to return to her family Qin to cultivate." This subject's daughter was once a candidate for His Majesty's concubine selection. There will definitely be people who will think that His Majesty and this subject's daughter are not innocent. This place used to be an imperial residence and is very close to the imperial palace. Although His Majesty and this subject's daughter are innocent, outsiders will say that His Majesty is in a favorable position. If His Majesty's character is criticized because of this subject's daughter, then even if this subject's daughter dies 10,000 times, it still won't be enough to atone for my sins. Yu Qiyan looked at Qin Yining with heartache. His gaze swept to the red and swollen left cheek of Ji Yun, who was kneeling and sobbing behind Qin Yining. The anger in his heart surged. According to the Imperial Guard, the Empress and Qin Yining had a conflict just now. Now that this slap had landed on the maidservant's body, if the maidservant hadn't been loyal to the Empress, wouldn't the one who had been hit be Qin Yining? Yu Qiyan looked at Li Yanyan with resentment. However, Qin Yining continued to speak. This subject's daughter suffered a calamity when she was young. She had just returned home to reunite with her family, but her family had suffered all kinds of disasters. She spent less time with her parents, and was unable to be filial to them. This subject's greatest sorrow and difficulty is this subject's daughter. Your Majesty, you know best what this subject's daughter is capable of. This subject's daughter has never concealed anything from your Majesty. I ask that your Majesty show mercy and allow this subject's daughter to return home to cultivate. When Yu Qiyan thought of Qin Yining's suffering, he felt incomparable heartache. However, he really couldn't bear to let her go. Once Qin Yining returned to the Qin manor, it would be as difficult as ascending to the heavens for them to meet again. There would be no chance for them to meet in private. However, when he saw Qin Yining's maidservant's swollen face after being hit, he thought of her background and pride. Thinking of her past, Yu Qiyan really couldn't bear for Qin Yining to be criticized outside after suffering so much. The Empress was Yu Qiyan's wife, and she still suspected that Qin Yining was a mistress he kept outside. What about those people who didn't understand his character? Would they think of them even more unbearable? For a moment, Yu Qiyan felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. I ask for your Majesty's permission. Qin Yining began to kowtow. Yu Qiyan pursed his lips and closed his eyes. In that instant, he thought of many things. He thought of Qin Huaiyuan's strategy, Qin Yining's intelligence, the Qin family's contributions to the court, and how resolutely Qin Yining had treated him that day in the palace. Actually, it was already impossible for them to be together in an open and honest manner. The only hope he had was that she would change her mind and give him a chance to pursue her. But now, it seemed that this simple wish of his could no longer be realized. It was his newly married empress who had caused things to turn out this way. Forget it. Forget it. Yu Yen slumped to the ground and said, "Don't be sad. We allow you to go back and cultivate. You can go home and be a lay Buddhist. We will continue to leave Xuanzu Temple for you. After today's events, Xuanzu Temple will become even more popular. If you want to come, you can stay here for a while. We won't force you." When Qin Yining heard this, he could finally relax. She hadn't done what he wanted. But Li Yanyan had come with ill intentions, and their relationship couldn't be reconciled. She didn't feel any pressure when dealing with someone who was hostile to her. Thus, when she saw that Li Yanyan was losing patience with her, she used words to anger Li Yanyan. She could take advantage of Yu Qiyan's heartache and anger to let her go. As for how Yu Qiyan would deal with Li Yanyan, she believed that as long as Yu Qiyan had the slightest bit of intelligence, he wouldn't do anything to Li Yanyan. After all, the Prince of Ning was seriously ill. The next person who could lead the army to resist Dezhou was Li Yanyan's father, Li Mian. There was no reason for the emperor to use Li Mian to fight, but punish his daughter. Seeing that the emperor had finally relented and said that he wouldn't force her, Qin Yining kowtowed respectfully. "This subject thanks your majesty for granting my wish." Yu Qiyan's heart was bleeding. He had granted Qin Yining his wish, but who would grant him his wish? He angrily turned around to look at the main culprit who had caused this situation. Yu Qiyan really wanted to strangle Li Yanyan to death. With the help of eunuch Lu, Yu Qiyan stood up. Just as he was about to speak, someone rushed in from outside. When he reached the door, he knelt down and kowtowed with tears and snot flowing down his face. "Your Majesty. The Prince of Ning, he has passed away." "What?" Yu Qiyan's vision turned black and he stumbled back 2 steps. Fortunately, eunuch Lu was smart enough to support him. Yu Qiyan and the Prince of Ning had a deep relationship. After the shock of not being able to accept this, his tears began to fall. Imperial Uncle, Shen has let you down. Your Majesty, you mustn't hurt your body from crying." Eunuch Lu sobbed as he tried to persuade him. Qin Yining's face had also turned pale from the sudden bad news. When she thought of the Prince of Ning's life as a soldier, her heart was filled with sorrow and she couldn't help but cry. "Prepare the horse, Zhen wants to go to the Prince of Ning's manor immediately." Yu Qiyan didn't have time to deal with Li Yanyan and stumbled outside. Li Yanyan quickly chased after him with the help of Li Momo and Lu Bao. Qin Yining used her sleeve to wipe the corners of her eyes. Chapter 257. Qin Yining pursed his lips and shook his head. "It's not appropriate for me to go now. Right now, the people gathered at Prince Ning's Fu must be members of the imperial family and the imperial family. If I want to offer my condolences, I can only return to the Fu and listen to father's arrangements." Ji Yun nodded. Although she was a citizen of Dezhou, she still respected heroes with integrity. Seeing Qin Yining silently wipe his tears, she remembered that Prince Ning had been injured by Pang Xiao. She became nervous again and hesitated to speak. Qin Yining saw Ji Yun's reaction and sighed. However, war is war. As long as war begins, there will be casualties. Peng Zhishi and Prince Ning have been opposing each other from the start. I had long thought that there would be a day where either Prince Ning or Peng Zhishi would die. This time, Peng Zhishi was more skilled. Qin Yining raised his head and took a deep breath. "In the end, I am still selfish." "Miss, don't think so much." Qiu Lu gently advised from the side, "You are just a little girl. These big matters are not something you can control. Let the men deal with the matters of men. Qin Yining smiled bitterly. Other than this, what else can I do? The master and servant trio packed their simple belongings and left the residence. The 4 Jinghu Wei and Mu Jinghu that Pang Shao had arranged for them had already prepared the horses outside. After bidding farewell to the imperial bodyguards that the emperor had arranged, the group went through the side door of the residence and took a small path to Qin's Fu. After leaving for more than 10 days, the Marquis Fu did not look any different. However, there were craftsmen working on the burned courtyard at the back of the residence. When Qin Yining's carriage arrived at the front of the Fu, a quick-witted doorman immediately dashed into the inner residence to pass on a message. On the way back, Ji Yun had already whispered to her that the 4 bodyguards were not boxers, but Pang Zhao's personal bodyguard, Jinghu Wei, who was specially arranged to protect her. This made Qin Yining very happy for a while, but when she thought of the war between the 2 countries and Prince Ning's death, she despised herself for a while. However, life still had to go on. She still had to plan for her own happiness. As such, by the time they got off the carriage, Qin Yining had already sorted out his emotions. He turned around and smiled at the 3 of them. If you don't mind, why don't you return to the residence with me? I'll arrange your accommodations. Is that all right? The leader of the 4 people cupped his hands and said in a low voice, in reply to Miss, we won't be following you into the mansion. It's more comfortable outside, and it's easier to do things. Qin Yining said understandingly, I understand. Then you can stay at the Cloud stepping in for the time being. I'll inform Master Zhong. During this period of time, all of you can go to Master Zhong to collect your meals, lodging and expenses. When the 4 people heard this, they liked the way this beautiful future princess consort handled matters even more, and their attitudes became even more respectful. This subordinate thanks Princess Consort. When Qin Yining heard this, her face flushed red. She forced herself to remain calm and said, you can go. Yes. The 4 people bowed and led their horses away. Mu Jinghu saw Qin Yining's red cheeks and neck and couldn't help but ask curiously, it's really strange. They didn't address you wrongly. Why are you blushing? Qin Yining already knew that Mu Jinghu's personality was wooden, dull and straightforward. However, when she heard him say this, she still couldn't help but feel embarrassed. She didn't reply to him and went into the residence. Mu Jinghu blinked in confusion. After entering the residence, she went to her room in the outer courtyard. At this time, the Sun clan had already brought Mother Jean, 8th young mistress and Qin Yining out to welcome her. My son. When she saw Qin Yining, the Sun clan beamed with joy. She rushed forward and hugged Qin Yining in her arms. You're finally back. You don't have to leave this time. Mother. Qin Yining pressed his cheek against the Sun clan's shoulder and rubbed her neck. His Majesty allowed me to come home and be a layman. Mother, I've troubled you these days, haven't I? The Sun clan had been at odds with the Dowager Duchess for the past few days. Although everyone seemed to be more united after the family Qin met with a great disaster, the Dowager Duchess was still alive. Moreover, after time had covered up the sorrow, the Dowager Duchess became the same as before. She found the Sun clan to be an eyesore. In addition, the Dowager Duchess supported Qin Yining to be the emperor's concubine. This made the Sun clan even less hopeful about the Dowager Duchess's character. The mother-in-law and daughter-in-law were at loggerheads almost every time they met. The Dowager Duchess bullied the Sun clan even more ruthlessly. Every day, she would make the Sun clan go to her side to set the rules. When their daughter was not at home, the Sun clan endured a lot. They held their breath and only thought that they must not be looked down upon. However, their daughter was back and spoke so considerately the moment she met them. The Sun clan's tears almost fell. It's not difficult, it's not difficult. It's a blessing that our family is safe and sound. Why would there be any difficulties? Qin Yining did not need to think carefully to guess the Sun Clan's situation when she was not at home. Thus, she acted spoiled and rubbed against the Sun Clan's embrace. On the side, the eighth young lady looked at them with a smile. Although she missed her deceased mother and concubine mother and envied Qin Yining for having a mother to act spoiled, she was also full of blessings. However, Qin Yining's face was stupefied. In the past, this embrace belonged to her. This mother also belonged to her. Now, she had nothing left. Qin Yining had everything. When she entered the door just now, Qin Yining did not even look at her. Now that Qin Yining was famous all over the world, he was not in the same world as her. She did not even have the qualifications to treat Qin Yining as an opponent. Because to be an opponent, at least they had to stand on equal footing. Could she still be on the same footing as Qin Yining? The sixth young lady's matter made her tread on thin ice in the Fu. She did indeed push the sixth young lady to block a knife in a time of crisis, but at that time, she did not believe that if someone else was in her position and situation, they would not think more for themselves. These people were lucky to survive. They did not know how happy they were, but they blamed her. While Qin Yining's heart was in turmoil, Qin Yining had already taken the Sun Clan's arm and was talking with the eighth young lady as they headed to Xiaishao Garden. Qin Yining was left on the spot. No one paid attention to her, so she could only bite her lower lip and follow. Granddaughter greets old madam. When Qin Yining saw the old madam, she obediently knelt down to greet her. The old madam looked at her with a smile. Quickly get up. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. Granddaughter hasn't been home these days. The old madam and second aunt must have been tired to take care of the family. Qin Yining stood up and greeted second madam. Second madam had always liked Qin Yining's steadiness and ability to see the big picture. Now, the most promising daughter in the family was Qin Yining. Therefore, second madam held Qin Yining's hand and asked about her well-being. The family stayed in Xiaishao Garden for a while before the old madam ordered the servants to prepare lunch. Third master, Qin Han, and Qin Yu came back from lunch and were very happy to see Qin Yining. When they asked why the emperor suddenly allowed her to come home, Qin Yining did not elaborate on the conflict between her and the empress. She was afraid that it would cause panic in the womenfolk of the family, so she only said that it was the emperor's order. Ning Wang's funeral caused a sensation in the capital. Qin Yining also went with the womenfolk of the family to offer her condolences. She even went to comfort Wang Fei. However, a person's death was like a lamp being extinguished. No matter how valiant a person was, there would be a day when they would leave. When a hero returned, it was hard not to sigh. After King Ning was buried, the imperial court began to auction official positions and allowed merchants to come and trade with food as the price. It was also in full swing. Seeing the granaries in the city begin to transport grain cart after cart of grain, the price of rice in the grain stores began to slow down and gradually reached a price that the common people could accept. Jingdo, which had been enveloped by the grief of Ning Wang's death, finally became cheerful. After all, the common people were still concerned about whether they could eat their fill. As for other things, how could the common people care? After a month of rest, Qin Yining's shoulder injury finally healed. Bing Tang had given her a prescription to replenish her vital energy and blood. Her complexion also improved after taking the medicine. She was no longer as pale as before and no longer felt dizzy and flustered. That evening, Qin Yining left Bing Tang in the room for the night. The two of them fanned themselves in the outer room and spoke in a low voice. Suddenly, they heard the faint creaking sound of a window being pushed open in the inner room. Bing Tang said, "It's windy tonight. Perhaps the window in the washroom was blown open again." I'll go lock it up. No need. I was just about to go to the washroom. Qin Yining kicked off her shoes and got off the floor. She smiled and said, "You should lay out the mat. It's getting late. We should go to bed." Okay. Bing Tang laid out his bedding on the Luohan bed in the outer room. Qin Yining put on a small jacket and walked towards the washroom with a silk lamp in her hand. Who knew that when she lifted the curtain, she would suddenly see a black shadow walk towards her? Her heart skipped a beat. Just as she was about to cry out in alarm, she was pulled into the man's embrace. A large hand covered her mouth. A familiar yet strange smell, with a hint of grass, smoke, and blood, overbearingly occupied her senses. Qin Yining's body couldn't help but tremble. It's him. His scorching lips landed on her neck. Pang Xiao's deep voice sounded in her ear, "Sister Yi, I'm here to see you." Qin Yining's heart was racing. She almost lost her grip on the silk lamp in her hand. Luckily, Pang Xiao caught the lamp quickly and blew it out. The lights were bright, and it was easy to see the figure on the window lattice. If they wanted to be safe, they could only feel the darkness. Are you crazy? The situation in the city is so tense at this time. How can you enter the city? Aren't you afraid of being caught by them? Qin Yining said anxiously. Pang Xiao chuckled. His lips pressed against her earlobe, and he replied in the same tone, "If you didn't come, I would have gone crazy. Let me see if your injury has healed." As he spoke, he reached out to check Qin Yining's shoulder. Qin Yining's face was red with embarrassment. She quickly grabbed her clothes and said in a low voice, "It's all healed. It's all healed. Don't be like this." Bing Tang heard the commotion outside and asked curiously, "Miss, what's wrong?" He was about to come in with the lamp. Qin Yining hurriedly said, "I'm fine." She looked at Pang Xiao hesitantly. She didn't know what he had planned. Pang Xiao laughed. He pulled Qin Yining's hand and walked outside. He said in a low voice, "It's me." Bing Tang's eyes widened in shock. "Wang Yi. Why are you here?" Chapter 258. Pang Xiao had lost a lot of weight, and the contours of his face had become deeper and more defined. His long eyebrows that reached his temples covered his pair of bright phoenix eyes. When he looked at Qin Yining, his gaze was so gentle that it was as if he could drown in it. His curved lips showed that he was in a good mood at the moment. Qin Yining's heart was beating fast, and his face was red. He looked away to avoid eye contact with Pang Xiao. He saw that Pang Xiao was wearing a patched shirt, and upon closer inspection, there seemed to be some dark blood stains on his abdomen. Qin Yining thought of the smell of blood that filled his nose when Pang Xiao hugged him just now. He hurriedly stroked Pang Xiao's abdomen, and sure enough, it was warm and sticky to the touch. "You're injured," Qin Yining exclaimed in a low voice. Pang Xiao lowered his head to look at his abdomen, and said with some annoyance, "It's nothing. It's just a small injury. Maybe it's because I moved a little too much just now that I'm bleeding." Qin Yining hurriedly pushed Pang Xiao to a nearby embroidered stool to sit down. He turned around and said to Bing Tang, "Quickly take a look at him." Although Bing Tang felt sorry for Prince Ning's death, she also understood that war depended on one's ability. On the battlefield, swords and knives had no eyes. Therefore, she nodded without hesitation and went to get the medical kit. Qin Yining looked around, lowered his eyes, and said, "It's not convenient here. Come with me." They definitely needed to light a lamp to check the injury, but if they lit a lamp here, the people outside would clearly see the shadows in the room. Qin Yining took Pang Xiao's hand and led him to the inner room. He pulled up the gauze curtain outside the step bed and led him to the inner room to sit on the edge of the bed. Her bed was made of carved red sandalwood and was divided into 2 rooms. The inner room had a large bed that was big enough for 2 people to roll around on. The outer room had a small table, a low cabinet, and a footrest. Both the inner and outer rooms were covered with a layer of gauze curtains that blocked out the light. When placed there, it was like a small independent room in the bedroom. As long as the outer curtains were drawn and the light was lit in the middle of the bed, there was no need to be afraid of being seen. Pang Xiao sat on the edge of the bed and looked around curiously. She looked at the light blue curtain embroidered with pear blossoms, the light green and light pink bedding, and the pillowcase. She seemed to smell the faint fragrance of Qin Yining, which was unique to young girls. Her heart softened. Then he looked at Qin Yining, who was wearing a snow-white silk robe and a long skirt, which made her look even more delicate and delicate. He couldn't help but feel pity for her. "You've lost a lot of weight." Qin Yining smiled and said, "Aren't you the same?" She put a silk lamp on the small table, took a match, and bent down to light it. The slightly open neckline revealed her delicate collarbone, and the angle of her head made her small face look even bigger. As she bent down, her soft long hair slid from her shoulders to the front. The warm light was on. Looking at Qin Yining, Pang Xiao felt that the fatigue and anxiety of this period disappeared. Qin Yining went back to get 2 more lamps and lit them up. The bed was very bright, and she covered the gauze curtains tightly. "Let Bing Tang take a look for you." Pang Xiao just looked at her in a daze. He was stunned for a moment before he reacted and smiled. "Then I'll take off my clothes." As he spoke, he looked at Qin Yining with shining eyes, as if he didn't want to miss any changes in her expression. He slowly unbuttoned his clothes. His actions were like a silent seduction, which made Qin Yining blush. She whispered, "You're not serious. Doesn't your wound hurt?" "It doesn't hurt. When I look at you, I forget all the pain." His eyes were still fixed on Qin Yining. Qin Yining finally gave in and turned her head away from him. If she didn't want to check on his injury, she would have gone out of the room. Pang Xiao knew that going too far was as bad as falling short, so he stopped teasing her. He took off his shirt and threw it aside, revealing his muscular arms and bandaged abdomen. He was tall and straight. Although he looked thin, he was a typical example of flesh without clothes. However, at this moment, Qin Yining had no time to appreciate the smooth lines of his shoulders, neck, and arms. As soon as she saw the red bandage on his abdomen, her heart clenched and her whole body turned cold. "How did you get hurt?" Her voice was trembling. Bing Tang had already started to unwrap the bandage. Pang Xiao let Bing Tang do it and smiled at Qin Yining comfortingly. "It's okay. I was cut by Ning Wang, but it's not a big deal. It's all better now. What about you? I heard that your injury was very serious. Plus, your family has been through a lot lately, so it's no wonder you lost so much weight. I really wanted to come and see you, but the 2 armies were at war, so I couldn't leave my post easily. I was also afraid that if I came here, I would be discovered and cause trouble for you." Pang Xiao sighed, swallowing back the part about Yu Qiyan's plan to make Qin Yining the empress. He laughed and said, "Fortunately, recently your emperor has been selling his official position, and the newly appointed commander-in-chief Li Mian is as timid as a mouse, not daring to accept the challenge. That's why I was able to blend in with the coolies carrying the gunny sack to enter the city to see you." Qin Yining listened to Pang Xiao's evasive words and said sadly, "I'm fine. What's important is you. Swords have no eyes on the battlefield. You must be careful." "I know. Don't worry. The person who can kill me, Pang Zhishi, hasn't been born yet." Pang Xiao smiled gently at her. Qin Yining asked Bing Tang, "How's his injury?" Bing Tang was taking out a small knife from the medicine box. He frowned and sneered, Wang Yi, if you don't take care of yourself, next time, I'll make a hole in your stomach. Your wound is infected and you have a fever. How dare you run around and let your wound reopen again and again? Even if you want to die, don't let my daughter bear the sin. As a doctor, he was most angry with patients who didn't take their own bodies seriously. Pang Zhao's symptoms were the same as Ning Wang's. They were both knife wounds, blood loss, and infection. The difference was that Ning Wang's injury was more serious and he was older. Pang Zhao only had this one wound, and he was young and strong. Bing Tang's mood was particularly heavy when he saw this kind of injury. He didn't hold back with his words. Pang Zhao was a little embarrassed after being scolded. I just wanted to see your daughter. If I didn't come, I would get lovesick again. Bing Tang snorted, if you don't want to die young and let my daughter become a widow early, I advise you to listen to me and take care of yourself. My daughter doesn't want to be an empress and doesn't want glory and wealth. Do you want to be sad for the future? Pang Zhao touched his nose and looked at Qin Yining apologetically. I've made things difficult for you these days, haven't I? It's my incompetence to let you be caught in the middle. Qin Yining shook his head with tears in his eyes. What are you saying? You didn't lie to me. When I promised you, I knew this would happen. It's not your fault. She watched as Bing Tang deftly treated Pang Zhao's wound. He scraped away the rotten flesh, disinfected it with alcohol, stitched it up, applied medicine, and bandaged it. After this series of actions, she felt pain for him just by watching. Even her hands and feet were cold. However, Pang Zhao didn't even frown. He still looked at her with such a warm gaze, as if he cherished every opportunity to see her. Qin Yining's heart ached, but there was nothing he could do for him. He couldn't help but cry. Chapter 259. Bing Tang was also a little annoyed at himself for being too rash and making Qin Yining sad. He hurriedly said, Miss, don't worry. This injury is not fatal. This servant spoke so harshly only to make Wang Yi more alert. I know. Qin Yining wiped his tears with his sleeve and forced a smile, quickly treat him. I'll go ask Ji Yun to prepare some supper. Qin Yining was about to leave. Don't go. I'm not hungry. Pang Zhao finally managed to enter the city to see her. How could he bear to let her out of his sight? Nonsense. Since you sneaked into the city and had to avoid the spies around my house to see me, you definitely won't have a chance to eat properly. Bing Tang said that you still have a fever. You can't be careless about your health. Qin Yining said this and couldn't help but blush as he added, I'll be back immediately. After saying that, he turned around and lifted the curtain to go out. Pang Zhao recalled Qin Yining's teary and blushing face. He couldn't help but giggle foolishly for a while. Then he said to Bing Tang, don't say this in front of your miss in the future. Otherwise, you'll make her sad. Bing Tang snorted, my miss is very smart. Do you think that just because she doesn't speak much, she doesn't understand anything? She just doesn't say anything. If you really want my missus good, then please take care of yourself. Since you've already chased my miss across the country, then don't make her sad. My miss's health isn't good either. Pang Zhao didn't know this, but sometimes, he couldn't help it when he was in this position. How's her injury? She lost too much blood and hurt her foundation. She needs to recuperate for a period of time. With the identity of my miss, there will always be endless troubles to deal with. She has too many worries. What kind of person can live a long life while being depressed all day long? Pang Zhao frowned worriedly. Bing Tang continued, let's not talk about the distant past. Last month, there was no food in the city, and the commoners somehow found out that the retired emperor had hidden the money. Tens of thousands of people rushed to the Xuanzu temple to ask our miss what had happened. Just thinking about that scene is frightening. Miss is not an official of the imperial court. You just have an empty title. His Majesty failed to marry Miss and ordered her to cultivate in anger. This gave the common people a reason to make things difficult for Mississippi. If Miss had said anything wrong that day, I'm afraid you would have been cursed and trampled by the people. Then, you would have given the emperor an idea, and the empress would have made things difficult for you. For example, this kind of thing is very common. Even if Miss is a female Zhuge your heart would still be tired. At this point, Bing Tang rolled her eyes at Pang Xiao and carefully bandaged his wound. Then she said, "Our girl has a hard life, and you don't let her be at ease." Bing Tang was always on Qin Yining's side, so her words were naturally a little exaggerated. However, it was not far from the truth. How could Pang Xiao not know about Qin Yining's hardships? He frowned and did not say anything. Bing Tang tidied up his medical box, wrote a prescription, and handed it to Pang Xiao. "This servant will go and boil the medicine." Then, she left. She gave him a strong dose of medicine. She hoped that Pang Xiao would think more about Qin Yining in the future. At this moment, Qin Yining and Ji Yun came in with freshly cooked brown sugar millet porridge. Together with the soup dumplings and a few side dishes, they placed it on the small table. Ji Yun moved a square table over and placed it on the bed. Then, she bowed and left. She closed the two curtains around the bed and went outside to guard it. Qin Yining passed a pair of chopsticks to Pang Xiao and sat beside him with a fan. She first draped her light green jacket over Pang Xiao's shoulders and gently fanned him while watching him wolf down the food. "I've asked Bing Tang. You must go back and recuperate well. Don't fight again unless you have no other choice. If you fall ill, it will affect your whole life. Who will you cry to when you're not feeling well at your age?" "Of course I'll cry to you." Pang Xiao ate the soup dumplings quickly and elegantly. Qin Yining couldn't help but smile and shake her head. "I can listen to you cry, but I can't suffer for you. So you must take good care of yourself. Are you promising me a lifetime?" Pang Xiao stopped eating and looked at Qin Yining with burning eyes. Qin Yining recalled their conversation just now and realized what she meant. She blushed and hit him with the fan. "Hurry up and eat. You'll have good medicine after you finish eating. Fortunately, my body hasn't fully recovered and I have to take medicine all day. Brewing medicine won't attract attention. You can stay here after you take the medicine later." Pang Xiao laughed and said insincerely, "I can leave after I see you. It's so dangerous outside. You're injured. How can I let you go out without worry?" Qin Yining rolled her eyes at him. "You're still pretending to be innocent. Do you want me to say that? Will you refuse to stay?" "Of course not." Pang Xiao laughed. "I just want to hear more from you. You're so sly." Qin Yining also laughed. After Pang Xiao had a full meal, Qin Yining went to get him a cup of tea to rinse his mouth and a wet handkerchief to wipe his face. Pang Xiao sat on the bed and watched as she busied herself like a little wife for him. His heart was already filled with happiness and longing. "Sister E, don't be busy. Let's talk." Pang Xiao took her hand and let her sit on his lap. Qin Yining twisted uncomfortably, but his arm wrapped around her waist like an iron hoop. She couldn't break free and could only sit for a while. She said unwillingly, "What are you doing? This is such a big bed. Is there no place for me to sit on? Let go of me. Don't move." Pang Xiao's muscles were tense. He didn't want to be overly emotional because of the beauty in his arms. He said, "I just miss you. Even if I stay here tonight, I will find a chance to leave the city tomorrow. We don't spend much time together. Don't hide from me. Thinking that he was leaving tomorrow, Qin Yining was reluctant to part with him. She didn't refuse and obediently leaned on his shoulder. Pang Xiao held her with one hand and looked down at her black hair leaning on his shoulder. He couldn't help but raise his other hand and gently caress her cheek. Don't worry. I will end this war as soon as possible. The sooner it ends, the less suffering we will suffer. The sooner the people can live a peaceful life. Qin Yining lived in the city and didn't have to worry about food and clothing. Naturally, she didn't know what was happening outside. Pang Xiao didn't have the heart to tell her. However, in the midst of war, even if military discipline was emphasized, there were still many people who died because of accidental injuries or various reasons. Qin Yining knew that she couldn't ask him about military matters. After all, they were still on opposite sides. If he said too much and something went wrong, it would definitely cause unnecessary suspicion and conflict between them. Therefore, she only said, everything will go according to destiny. As long as you are safe, you can do whatever you want. Pang Xiao was moved. He kissed the top of her head and said, I know. Miss, the medicine is here. Ji Yun's voice came from outside. Qin Yining's face turned red. She hurriedly broke free from his arm and got up to get the medicine. At this moment, she heard the Sun clan's voice outside. Bing Tang is brewing medicine. Is Sister Yi feeling better? Chapter 260. Qin Yining put down the bowl of medicine and hurriedly pulled Pang Xiao's hand. She was like an ant on a hot pan, trying to find a place to hide him. Pang Xiao was amused by her appearance. He had seen her calm and gentle side when she was steady and resourceful. He already felt that she was very lovable. He didn't expect her to be even cuter when she was flustered. Qin Yining glared at him. You're still laughing. Look at the situation now. Why don't you hide in the cupboard? No, you can't get in with your size. You'd better hide in the washroom. As she said this, she pushed him into the washroom. She didn't forget to whisper, you must not make a sound. If my mother finds out, it won't be fun if she makes a fuss. Pang Xiao saw how nervous she was and chuckled as he walked. Don't we look like a pair of wild lovebirds who were caught having a private meeting? What are you talking about? Look at how dignified you are. Why are you talking about such things? Qin Yining hit him behind the door of the washroom. I told you to hide for your own good. I know, I know. Pang Xiao hugged Qin Yining and pecked her on the lips. Qin Yining's face flushed red. She wanted to push him away, but she was afraid that he would burst his wound. She didn't dare to struggle too much and could only pinch his arm. Stop fooling around. I can hear my mother's footsteps going upstairs. It doesn't hurt at all. Pang Xiao laughed happily and stole a kiss on her forehead. Only then did he let her go with satisfaction. Qin Yining rolled her eyes at him and patted her hot cheeks. She adjusted her clothes and adjusted her mood as she went out. She couldn't let the Sun clan find out about Pang Xiao. This was not just a matter of reputation, but also involved the relationship between the two countries. She could see war and love as two things, but others might not. If Pang Xiao, who was the commander-in-chief of the army, was caught, it would be a great event for Diane. She couldn't guarantee that her family wouldn't hand him over. Since he dared to take the risk to see her, she couldn't let him be in danger because of her. By the time they reached the door, Qin Yining had already adjusted his emotions. The Sun clan had also gone upstairs under the care of Mother Jean and Bing Tang. Mother, why are you here at this time? Qin Yining smiled and held the Sun clan's arm. The two of them sat down in the outer room. I'm bored, so I came to talk to you. The Sun clan member looked at Qin Yining's face. Have you not recovered yet? I see that Bing Tang is brewing medicine again. It's okay. It's a tonic. Qin Yining smiled and looked at Bing Tang. Bing Tang cooperated and explained, Madam, there's no need to worry. As long as Mrs. Body is nourished well, she will soon be as lively as a dragon and as lively as a tiger. The Sun Clan member nodded in relief and said, Since the medicine is ready, you should eat it. As she spoke, she thoughtfully handed the bowl of medicine that was meant for Pang Shao to Qin Yining. Pang Shao, who was in the cleaning room, was a little worried. Ji Yun and Bing Tang looked at each other. Ji Yun and Pang Shao were the same. They were nervous because they didn't know if Qin Yining would be harmful to her body after taking the medicine. Bing Tang, on the other hand, found it funny. Although Qin Yining was usually very straightforward when taking medicine and didn't even frown, she knew that Qin Yining was actually very afraid of bitterness. She had once asked her if she could add some licorice to the medicine. The two servant girls stared at Qin Yining, waiting to see how she would respond. Qin Yining calmly placed the bowl on the table and said, I'll eat it later. This medicine is too hot. Also, I just took another medicine. Bing Tang said that these two medicines can't be taken so close together. Ji Yun sighed in relief and secretly praised Qin Yining's quick-wittedness. Bing Tang lowered her head and began to hold back her laughter. Qin Yining pretended not to see the expressions of the two servant girls. She smiled and asked the Sun Clan member, Mother is usually asleep at this time. Are you worried about father today? Yes. The Sun Clan member nodded gloomily. After Duke and Guogong, Li Mian took over as the Grand Marshal of the Armed Forces, he began to avoid battle. The Tiger Army was incomparably valiant, and Pang Shao was good at strategizing. Compared to him, Duke and Guogong was much less courageous than Prince Ning. In the past month, he had suffered countless losses. More than 30,000 of the 350,000 soldiers defending the city had been whittled down by the 100,000 soldiers of the Tiger Army. Even if Yu Qi Yan wasn't good at scheming, he could see that this couldn't go on. Therefore, he appointed Qin Huaiyuan as his military advisor yesterday and went to the outer city to assist Duke and Guogong, Li Mian, in battle. After Qin Huaiyuan set out, Chao Yuqing quietly took the bundle and chased after him. When Qin Manor was in trouble, silver-masked spies came to protect it. When Qin Manor turned the tables, Chao Yuqing also led the silver-masked spies to help. Now, the people outside didn't know, but the Qin family members all knew that this delicate beauty was actually the leader of the silver-masked spies under the retired emperor. The Sun Clan was very happy that Qin Huaiyuan had an expert like Chao Yuqing by his side to protect him. However, when they thought about how Chao Yuqing was young, beautiful, and had outstanding martial arts skills. Moreover, she was sincere to Qin Huaiyuan, it was hard to say whether she wouldn't go through trials and tribulations with him on the battlefield. This made the Sun Clan's heart sour and bitter, so much so that they couldn't sleep. However, she wouldn't tell her daughter about such an embarrassing matter. When Qin Yining saw the Sun Clan's expression change in an instant, he had already guessed most of what had happened. However, as a junior, she couldn't interfere in the matters between her parents. Her father wasn't someone who didn't take concubines. Now that the Chao family had been destroyed and the retired emperor had been put under house arrest by the Yu Qi Yan because of the silver, Chao Yuqing had become a rootless duckweed. It was true that she had the silver-masked spies in her hands, but now she wholeheartedly belonged to Qin Huaiyuan. And the retired emperor didn't seem to be prepared to take back his silver-masked spies. Her father was in the prime of his life. He was brave, resourceful, and handsome. Chao Yuqing had been deeply in love with her father for many years. It could be seen that she treated her father wholeheartedly. In the past, she was restrained by the retired emperor, but now that there were no more worries, it wasn't unacceptable for her to become soft. However, no matter how reasonable this matter was, it was still painful for the official wife. She wanted to persuade her mother, but since the Sun clan didn't say anything, she didn't want to make them sad. She could only say, "Mother, don't worry. I heard that these 2 days, Dukan has begun to avoid the war. Father naturally isn't in any danger. Even if there is a war, Father doesn't have to go to the front lines. You can rest assured." The Sun clan nodded. She forced a smile and chatted with Qin Yining for a while. However, she lost interest in talking after a while and left with Mother Jean. Qin Yining sent the Sun clan downstairs. When he returned to his room, his mood was a bit heavy. When he reached the door, he remembered that Pang Xiao was still in the room. He turned around and said to Ji Yun and Bing Tang, "You two go rest. You don't need to sleep tonight." Bing Tang raised his eyebrows and smiled at Qin Yining. That smile was very teasing, causing Qin Yining's face to turn red. Ji Yun also held back her laughter, but her actions were very loyal to her master. She bowed and pulled Bing Tang away. When Qin Yining pushed open the door, he was actually a bit nervous. Chapter 261. Qin Yining prepared herself mentally. She gritted her teeth and pushed the door open. Before she could enter the room, a large hand wrapped around her and held her tightly in his arms. The door closed behind her with a creak, and the world spun around her. Her back was against the cold wall, and a hot body pressed against her. Before she could speak, her lips were fiercely sealed. Pang Xiao's mouth tasted slightly bitter, but more than that, there was a scorching heat that could burn her. Qin Yining felt as though she was on fire. She felt as though all the bones in her body had been pulled out. If it weren't for Pang Xiao's arms supporting her, she would have collapsed. The lights had already been blown out, so the room was dark. Only the sounds of kissing and heavy breathing could be heard. One of Pang Xiao's hands pressed against the back of her head to prevent her from shrinking away, while the other hand was stroking her slender back. They didn't separate until both of them felt as though they couldn't breathe. She wrapped her arms around his neck and panted as she looked at the handsome face in front of her. She said in a low voice, "Pang Zhishi." It was the first time she had called him by his courtesy name in such a tone. 2 clusters of fire ignited in Pang Xiao's eyes. He murmured in her ear. Qin Yining buried her face in his neck and whispered, "It would be great if you didn't have to go back." Pang Xiao's heart felt as though it had been fiercely kneaded. The romantic feelings he had just now were completely shattered, and all that was left was pity and guilt for her. Pang Xiao held her tightly in his arms and kissed her forehead sincerely. "Everything will be fine. There will be a day when we can be together." Qin Yining nodded, but she still felt sad when she thought of Qin Huayuan and the Sun clan, as well as Yu Qiyan and Li Yanyan. However, she was an extremely rational person. She wouldn't ask for anything easily. Pang Xiao was sensitive enough to feel that she was in low spirits. He thought for a moment and asked, "Are you worried about your father?" Qin Yining nodded in agreement. Pang Xiao said, "It is indeed dangerous when the battlefield is in chaos. I will arrange for the 4 Jinghu Wei to protect father-in-law. Don't worry, as long as I can control the situation, I will not let anything happen to father-in-law." Qin Yining nodded obediently. Pang Xiao could not help but narrow his eyes when he saw that she was still depressed. She recalled that before the Sun clan came, she was still fine, but after chatting with the Sun clan for a while, she became sad. Pang Xiao was a very smart person, and he knew the things around these important people like the back of his hand. Thinking that Qin Huayuan was accompanied by an extremely beautiful woman in the outer city military camp, he guessed a few things. Pang Xiao said tentatively, "If you marry me, I promise that I won't take any concubines, sleep with maids, or drink with prostitutes." I will only have you, okay? Qin Yining was startled by his sudden promise. She looked up at him in surprise. You are really strange. Why did you suddenly say this? Pang Xiao saw her expression and knew that he guessed right. This silly girl was unhappy because of the matter between Qin Huayuan and the Sun clan. He pinched her white cheeks in amusement. Don't you like it? Qin Yining blushed and stared at him again. She couldn't hide the joy in her watery eyes. She said insincerely, that's true, but isn't it normal for you men to have 3 wives and 4 concubines? Even if you don't bring them home, you can still have them when you socialize and play with them. Pang Xiao laughed when he heard that. I didn't expect that you have already thought about our future. Qin Yining realized what she had said. She blushed and turned to walk into the room. Pang Xiao chased after her and said with a smile, I am very happy that you think this way. You have suffered so much for me. If I don't treat you well, wouldn't I be too inhumane? What's more, to you, I'm like, once you've crossed the vast ocean, you can't be considered water. Apart from Mount Wu, you can't be a cloud. Pang Xiao followed her footsteps and sat down on the bed with her. Qin Yining said, you only know how to coax people with sweet words. I've never been good at coaxing people, Pang Xiao said seriously. A real man never goes back on his word. His seriousness made Qin Yining a little uncomfortable. She got up and went to the closet to get a pillow and a thin blanket, saying, get some rest. You sleep here. I will go outside. Pang Xiao saw that she was blushing and trying to change the topic. He smiled and did not pursue the matter. He took the pillow and put it on the bed, saying, it doesn't matter whether you believe me or not. You don't have to remember what I said. You just have to see what I will do in the future. As he spoke, he pressed Qin Yining down on the bed and said, you sleep on the bed, and I will sleep on the footrest. This way, we can talk. You still have a fever. How can I let you sleep on the footrest? Do you think I enjoyed life in the army? I slept in straw huts and horse pens. It was good enough to sleep on a footrest. Pang Xiao smiled as he took a mattress and laid it on the footrest outside the bed. He placed the pillow on one side and lay down straight. He could not help but let out a sigh of comfort. You have been tired all day. It is more comfortable to lie down. Qin Yining sat on the edge of the bed. She could not help but feel sorry for him when she saw how he curled up his legs and did not dare to turn over. Why don't you get on the bed? Pang Xiao's eyes widened when he heard this. He slowly propped himself up and looked at her. Qin Yining's face was hot, but she kept a straight face and said, don't think too much. What I mean is that this bed is so big. We can even put a small table in the middle. You can sleep on the outside. If someone comes, it will be easy for you to hide. Although it is summer now, there is still wind on the ground. You are injured and have a fever. Do you want to get worse by sleeping on the ground? Pang Xiao smiled and said, then I'll accept your offer. Qin Yining glared at him. She took off her shoes and got on the bed. She moved the pillow and mattress to the inside and placed the small table in the middle. Pang Xiao took the pillow and placed it on the outside. He placed the mattress under his feet as well. Only then did he put down the gauze curtains on the inside and outside of the bed. He then placed their shoes side by side. He lowered his head and looked at her beautiful and exquisite soft-soled embroidered shoes next to his black boots. His heart was filled with sweetness. Pang Xiao blew out the light and slowly lay down. The light and delicate fragrance on the mattress was unique to Qin Yining. There seemed to be the fragrance of jasmine in her hair on the pillow. Pang Xiao slowly turned over and buried his face in the thin blanket. He took a deep breath and couldn't help but laugh. People say that daughters are made of water, but my baby is made of flowers. Just sleeping next to you makes my nose fill with fragrance. Qin Yining was lying on her side with her back to him. Although there was a small table in the middle, his voice seemed to be right next to her ear. She closed her eyes tightly and didn't know how to answer him. Pang Xiao didn't wait for her to answer. He smiled and said, "I will remember today. This is the first time we sleep together." Qin Yining frowned and thought to herself, this is too awkward. A large hand fell on her head. Pang Xiao gently scratched her scalp. A soft and numb feeling instantly spread throughout her body. He gently pinched her earlobe lovingly and said softly, "Baby, sweet dreams." Qin Yining closed her eyes. Although her face was red and her heart was beating fast, she was extremely happy. She thought that she would have insomnia, but this night, she slept more peacefully than ever. Even the nightmares that had troubled her for a long time didn't disturb her. When she woke up, the spot beside her was empty. Qin Yining woke up with a start. Did he leave? Chapter 262. Mississippi Bing Tang carried a tray and placed it on the square table in the outer room. Then, she went into the inner room, pulled up the curtains, and hung them on the crabapple flower hooks. Qin Yining asked, "What time is it now?" "Miss, it's already early morning. I actually slept for so long." "That's right. Miss hasn't slept so deeply in a long time. Wang Yi even said that he didn't want this servant to wake you up and let you sleep until you woke up naturally." Bing Tang giggled as she put on a small jacket for her. Then, she gently pushed the long hair that was pressed under the jacket to the outside. "Miss, did Wang Yi do anything to you last night, bad girl?" Qin Yining blushed as she glared at Bing Tang. Bing Tang laughed even more happily. When Ji Yun and Qiu Lu heard Qin Yining get up, they also came in to help her wash up and comb her hair. Although they didn't ask directly like Bing Tang, their expressions were somewhat mocking. Qin Yining calmly pretended that she didn't see anything. She picked up a pair of pearl lilac glasses from the jewelry box and put them on. Then, she asked in a low voice, "Where's little Wang Yi?" Bing Tang said in a low voice, "Wang Yi woke up before the sun rose." After eating breakfast and taking medicine, this servant changed the bandages for Wang Yi. "Wang Yi saw that you were sleeping deeply, so he didn't wake you up. He said that he had to arrange for the 4 Jinghu Wei and went out through the back window." Qin Yining nodded. She knew that he was going to arrange for the imperial bodyguards for her father. Although Pang Xiao was from Great Zhou, and he had arranged his personal guards to protect the military advisor of Yan dynasty in the middle of a war, which would definitely cause a backlash from his subordinates, Qin Yining believed that Pang Xiao would be able to handle it well. As usual, Qin Yining, together with 8th Miss and Qin Huaining, went to pay respects to the old madam. They also chatted with the members of the Sun clan for a while before returning to the master's study. She did not go out the entire day and waited in the master's study. Who knew that Pang Xiao did not come back even when the sky turned dark? Instead, Mu Jinghu came. Fox was just about to come back, but there was an emergency ahead. He took Huzi and left in a hurry. "Let me apologize to you. I'll visit you again when I have the chance." Mu Jinghu calmly observed Qin Yining's expression. As if he was afraid that she would be angry with Pang Xiao, he hurriedly explained himself. "Don't blame him. He had no choice. He was bullied badly by their emperor. It's not easy to come and see you. He took the risk to come here. Not only does he have to be watched by the Dayan, there are also many spies in the Zhou dynasty who are watching his movements. This time, it seems that the people in Dezhou discovered that he left his post without permission and are suspected of colluding with the enemy." When Mu Jinghu said this, he was a little worried himself. He continued, "I think that the imperial court in Dezhou is not much better. They attack each other and do not care about the safety of the country. They are very good at framing capable officials. How could Qin Yining not know that Pang Xiao was in a difficult position? She was already very touched that he took the risk to come here. How could she blame him for this? However, after hearing Mu Jinghu's words and knowing that Pang Xiao's situation in the Zhou dynasty was so awkward, she became even more worried. Young Master Mu, can you tell me about his situation in Dezhou? Mu Jinghu was afraid that Fox's sudden departure would anger Qin Yining and delay his search for a wife. Therefore, when he heard Qin Yining's question, he was naturally willing to take the opportunity to tell Qin Yining about Fox's difficulties. Mu Jinghu told him what he knew. When you were in Dian, you saw how he led his troops and rampaged around. You thought that he had elite soldiers under his command, prestige in the army, and fame outside, and that he was indeed very impressive. However, you did not know that he was actually suppressed by their emperor. Back then, their emperor Li Qitian, Marquis North pacifying Ji Ziyu, and Fox became sworn brothers. You know about this, right? Qin Yining nodded. This matter is known to the whole world. But you definitely don't know why my martial uncle gave the three of them the order. It happened to be a chaotic time. The demon Fox came to the mortal world to cause chaos and destroy the destiny of the previous dynasty. The three malefic stars, Tan Lang, Qi Sha, and Pejun, assisted the Emperor Star of Ziwei to reach the top and created a world of peace. This Tan Lang landed in the northern grasslands. As for Pejun, Qi Sha, and the Emperor Star of Ziwei, they should be with Li Qitian, Ji Ziyu, and Fox. You said that your martial uncle gave them the order. You are Tian Jizi's martial nephew. Qin Yining was very surprised. Mu Jinghu covered his mouth. His face was blank, and he looked as if he had swallowed a raw egg. He had let it slip. For the sake of Fox's wife, he had even revealed his own identity. Seeing his expression, Qin Yining immediately said in an extremely understanding manner, "Young Master Mu, don't worry. Since you are being honest with me, I will definitely not reveal your identity. Only you and I will know what young Master Mu said today." Mu Jinghu looked at Qin Yining's sincere eyes and nodded slowly. He said, "All right, then I will believe you. Anyway, you won't know that my martial uncle and I are actually..." He stopped abruptly. Mu Jinghu hit his head. In his excitement, he almost blurted out, "My martial uncle and I are actually master and disciple." Mu Jinghu awkwardly changed the topic. He said, "After my martial uncle gave them the order, they thought that they would be able to achieve meteoric success. However, when Li Qitian ascended the throne, my martial uncle hurriedly left. Can you guess why?" Qin Yining's brain was already spinning rapidly. His expression immediately became serious. He lowered his voice and said, "Could it be that Peng Zhishi is the Emperor Star of Ziwei?" Mu Jinghu said in surprise, "How did you think of that? How are you so smart?" He was as cunning as a fox. Qin Yining knew that he could not speak half-heartedly when dealing with the somewhat slow-witted young Master Mu. He had to be blunt. Since he had already revealed that he was Tian Jizi's martial nephew, he could not hide anything either. "This is what young Master Mu said just now. Young Master Mu said that Jishi's situation in Dezhou was difficult, and you also mentioned the Tian Jizi's order. Then, the reason why Emperor Zhou wanted to make things difficult for Jishi was one of the reasons. In addition, young Master Mu mentioned the order of the three stars, Pejun, Qisha, and Ziwei. The answer is self-evident. I have always heard that Li Qitian is cautious and suspicious. He is calm and thinks a lot. Why would an emperor develop a suspicious personality? There is only one reason, and that is because he has a guilty conscience." Qin Yining narrowed his eyes and said, he did not obtain the throne properly. Naturally, he would be worried day and night that someone would replace him. It seems like everyone wants to scheme against him. Mu Jinghu gave him a thumbs up in admiration. That's why they say that people of the same family will not enter the same house. You and the fox are both equally smart. It is indeed so. When my martial uncle found out that the real Emperor Star of Ziwei did not ascend the throne, he fled. Perhaps you knew all this before, or perhaps you did not. However, what you should know is that after the Pajuan Star ascended the throne, he was naturally afraid of the Emperor Star of Ziwei's retaliation. Chapter 263. Qin Yining naturally felt honored that Pang Xiao was being praised like this. However, apart from being happy, she was more worried about him. In the past, I had guessed that Pang Zhixi's life might not be good on the surface. Qin Yining stood up and paced back and forth worriedly. He was the vanguard of the attack on Beiji. In order to take revenge, he cruelly killed some Beiji officials. I originally thought that the Beiji officials who surrendered to De Zhou must be on the opposite side of Pang Zhixi. In addition, he has high prestige in the army, so the Zhou Emperor must be wary of him. However, the consequences of these two factors are unimaginable. If what you said is true, the Zhou Emperor will definitely not allow him to exist in this world. Qin Yining frowned and slowly stopped walking. She gripped the armrest of her chair so tightly that her knuckles gradually turned white. After hearing her analysis, Mu Jinghu also felt that Pang Zhao's situation was indeed dangerous. He was so shocked that his face turned pale. Based on what you said, won't he be in danger when he goes back this time? Qin Yining shook her head and said, I'm afraid that these people's attacks on him are just adding fuel to the fire. The Zhou Emperor won't touch him for the time being. After all, they still need him to take down Dian. The Tiger Army is now the main force of the army. It's a big taboo to change the commander-in-chief at the last minute. He'll be fine in the short term. Mu Jinghu heard this and sighed deeply. Fortunately, that's the case. On second thought, he only said this to let Qin Yining know that Pang Xiao was in a difficult position outside. He didn't expect her to know more than he did. He was also involved. Mu Jinghu scratched his head and said, Since you know everything, that's good. I'll take my leave first. I still have to thank you. Mu Jinghu felt strange and asked, Thank me for what? Thank you for your concern for Pang Zhixi. It's Pang Zhixi's blessing to have a close friend like you. Mu Jinghu blushed at her compliment. He did not know how to respond to such a straightforward compliment, so he coughed and said, Nothing, I'll take my leave first. Qin Yining responded with a smile to a person who was not good with words but was extremely honest. He politely walked out the door to see him off. Qin Yining frowned as he watched him walk away. He turned around and went up to the attic. Last night, he was by her side. Although they were separated by a small table, the two of them slept on the same bed. They could hear each other's breathing. Even when she was asleep, she could feel his strong presence. But they had only been together for such a short time, and he had to go back. Moreover, he had to face the accusations of colluding with the enemy. Even if she could analyze that Emperor Zhou would not touch him for the time being, she still felt bad for him. Qin Yining's mind was full of worry. That night, he could not sleep again. He only managed to fall asleep when the sky gradually brightened. However, after sleeping for an hour, he got up and fainted again. Not to mention the Sun clan, even the Dowager Duchess, who was old and dim-sighted, could see that Qin Yining was haggard. She was worried that her old illness would relapse, so she hurried her to rest. While Qin Yining was catching up on sleep, Pang Xiao and Huzi had already returned to Xihua City. Pang Xiao raised his eyebrows in front of him when he saw Zhao Yueshui, who looked like a white steamed bun. He said, Eunuch Xiao's greeting gift is really special. You immediately put a big accusation on my head. Colluding with the enemy. Betraying the country. Eunuch Zhao, is this the crime that you have decided on this king? Zhao Yueshui was specially sent by Emperor Zhou to supervise the army. He was in charge of observing Pang Zhao's movements at the front line. He had the authority to directly report to Emperor Zhou about the situation at the front line. Emperor Zhou valued Zhao Yueshui. In addition, he and eunuch Li Guanwen, who was in charge of the ceremony directorate, were from the same hometown and were also father and son. Before he left, Zhao Yueshui's godfather, eunuch Li, had privately warned him a lot. He also heard some rumors, so he had some contempt for Pang Xiao in his heart. Moreover, no matter what he did, his godfather would protect him in the capital. Who would dare to be disrespectful to the army supervisor? Zhao Yueshui smiled proudly. Wang Yi really knows how to joke. How can we have the authority to convict Wang Yi? However, as the commander-in-chief, Wang Yi left his post without permission. By doing this, are you worthy of the emperor's trust in you? Are you worthy of the emperor's great kindness? As he spoke, he cupped his hands towards the north and arrogantly raised his chin to stare at Pang Xiao. Pang Xiao playfully took a pillow and leaned it against his back. He sat comfortably on the round-backed chair, his straight legs in black silk pants on the table. He leisurely said, "The enemy's new commander-in-chief avoids fighting for 30 days in a month. This king is bored to death. Can't he go and explore the terrain? If the enemy doesn't fight, Wang Yi will think of ways to make them fight. Have you thought about how much food the Tiger Army spends in a day while you're wandering around like this? The emperor trusts you and gives you money and food. Is this how you repay him?" Zhao Yueshui's voice was very tough. His black eyes were like small black beans embedded in white steamed buns. "I have to report Wang Ye's actions to the emperor." TSK. Pang Xiao played with the horsewhip in his hand. How interesting. Zhao Yueshui, have you forgotten where you are? Pang Xiao's voice was very languid. His tone was amiable as if he was talking about the weather. But Zhao Yueshui felt his body tighten. He put on a strong front and said, "Wang Yi, don't forget whose territory this world is. How dare you?" Huzi had long disliked this fat steamed bun. He kicked Zhao Yueshui several steps back and fell to the ground. "How dare you be presumptuous in front of our Wang Yi? Peng Zhishi, you're the one who's bold. You actually dare to beat me." "Beat?" Pang Xiao chuckled. He lazily supported his forehead with one hand and narrowed his eyes slightly. "List out eunuch Zhao's crimes of selling information at a high price, embezzling military provisions, and colluding with the local gentry. He colluded with the enemy and committed treason. This king's bodyguard caught him in the act and still dared to lie through his teeth. Report all of this to the emperor. As the commander-in-chief of the army, this king can't tolerate such a disaster by his side, so he beheaded him on the spot. Then draft a memorial for this king to apologize to the emperor. However, this is an urgent matter. We can't tolerate the existence of a spy in front of the army." At this point, Pang Xiao closed his eyes and pretended to sleep. Huzi responded with a yes. His eyes lit up as he grabbed Zhao Yueshui by the collar and walked out. Zhao Yueshui was so scared that his face turned pale. He wet his pants on the spot. "You can't do this. You're slandering me." "Slandering you? Not only did you sell military information at a high price, but you also dare to put the blame on Wang Yi. I think you're clearly benefiting from an outsider. You want to get rid of Wang Yi and make the emperor lose a loyal official." Huzi had been by Pang Zhao's side for a long time and was very eloquent. He threw Zhao Yueshui to the open space in the barracks and made his evil deeds public. The soldiers of the Tiger Army had long been displeased with the eunuch ordering them around in the barracks. Moreover, Zhao Yueshui was also very annoying. Now that they heard Huzi say that he dared to slander Pang Xiao, as a direct descendant of Pang Xiao, everyone who heard the news was furious and fought to tear Zhao Yueshui into pieces. For a time, the barracks were filled with discussions about Zhao Yueshui's treason. They clamored to kill Zhao Yueshui. In just a moment, the situation had become tense. If Zhao Yueshui wasn't killed, it might cause a mutiny. Chapter 264. Just as the tiger army outside was clamoring to tear Zhao Yueshui into pieces, Huzi quickly walked into the tent. He leaned close to Pang Xiao and asked in a low voice, "Wang Yi, it's so chaotic outside. I'm afraid that the situation won't be easy to clean up. Do you really plan to kill Zhao Yueshui?" Pang Xiao looked up and said, "Of course it's true." He acted like a tyrant in Xihua City and aroused public anger. This king wants to kill him to pacify the army. What's more, he sold the information without any evidence. This king didn't accuse him wrongly. But Zhao Yueshui is your majesty's spy. If Wang Yi kills him, it's a public confrontation against your majesty. I'm afraid that it will cause the villain to speak ill of you behind your back and make your majesty more afraid of you. Pang Xiao sneered and said, "Do you think that this castration was entirely his idea? He usually acts like a tyrant in Xihua City. Although he straightens his back, doesn't this king have to put away his arrogance? Even if he looks down on this king in his heart, he's used to disobeying him in public but disobeying him in private. Now he dares to criticize this king to his face. Where do you think he gets the courage?" Hearing this, Huzi's expression changed and he sucked in a breath of cold air. "Your Highness, are you saying that this is the Emperor's order?" Pang Xiao shook his head. "Your Majesty is a smart person. This king is still useful. He won't shoot himself in the foot. Li Guanwen must have noticed something and communicated with Zhao Yueshui. That's still difficult." Huzi's face turned pale. "Your Majesty has been afraid of Wang Yi for a long time. The braver Wang Yi is in battle and the greater his contributions, the more your Majesty is afraid of him. Li Guanwen is your Majesty's eunuch. Since he can hold the position of eunuch in the ceremony directorate, it means that he must be smart and shrewd. How can such a guy misjudge your Majesty's intention towards Pang Xiao?" Although he knew that your Majesty was such a person, Huzi was still shocked and broke out in a cold sweat. At this moment, the curtain was lifted and Zheng Pei in a dark blue robe walked in quickly. He said anxiously, "Wang Yi. Mr. Zheng is here. Have a seat." Pang Xiao raised his chin at Zheng Pei. Huzi brought a chair over and placed it properly. He cupped his hands at Zheng Pei. His polite and distant attitude was completely different from his previous intimate attitude. Zheng Pei felt bitter in his heart. He bowed to Pang Xiao first and said anxiously before sitting down, "Wang Yi, please think twice. Zhao Yueshui is Li Guanwen's adopted son. If you kill Zhao Yueshui, you will offend Li Guanwen. Li Guanwen has the most say in your Majesty. He is not sweet when making candy, but sour when making vinegar. You can't be reckless. If you kill Zhao Yueshui, you will offend the Heavenly Majesty. Your Majesty has all the power and can't tolerate such things like killing first and reporting later. Zhao Yueshui is someone your Majesty sent to you. Even if you want to beat a dog, you have to look at its owner. For the sake of your standing in the imperial court in the future, Wang Yi, please think carefully about what I said." At this point, Zheng Pei stood up and bowed again. Pang Xiao smiled calmly and looked very gentle under the candlelight. "Mr. Zheng, please sit down and talk." He didn't answer Zheng Pei directly. Zheng Pei's heart was full of bitterness. He knew that his behavior of secretly reporting Pang Xiao's every move to your Majesty finally pushed this young man away from him completely. He didn't trust him anymore. But he couldn't completely ignore him. After all, he was also the descendant of Pang Zhongjing. Jing Pei slowly sat back on the chair and looked at Pang Xiao expectantly. Mr. Zheng, what you said is reasonable. Pang Xiao said leisurely. His tone didn't seem to be talking about an important matter that would affect his future or even life and death. It was light and casual, as if he were chatting. With Mr. Zheng's intelligence, you should understand that even if this king doesn't kill Zhao Yueshui, some things are already settled. Some people who don't like this king will still dislike him. Jing Pei was suffocated and couldn't think of a suitable answer for a long time. He knew that Pang Xiao was a smart person and couldn't be fooled with one or two nice words. Pang Xiao was telling the truth. Your Majesty's fear of Pang Xiao wouldn't decrease at all because of this, and the old officials of Beiji who surrendered wouldn't change their opinion of Pang Xiao because of this. This king knows that Mr. Zheng is thinking for this king, but now I believe that Mr. Zheng has already thought through some key points. Since some things can't be changed, why should this king be a pushover? Don't tell me that as a man, you don't even have the courage to speak loudly. That will only make you more vulnerable. Sooner or later, you will be bullied until you can't raise your head. Jing Pei was convinced and couldn't find any words to refute. He could only nod. Pang Xiao glanced at Huzi. Huzi didn't worry as much as Jing Pei. Seeing that Pang Xiao had made a decision, he rubbed his fists and was eager to try. After getting Pang Xiao's approval, he immediately rushed out to deal with Zhao Yueshui in high spirits. Only Pang Xiao and Jing Pei were left in the tent. Jing Pei looked at Pang Xiao's sharp eyes under the light. For a moment, he felt that he couldn't look straight at them and was extremely embarrassed. He used to think that he was the most trustworthy person around Pang Xiao. He also used to think that it was his betrayal that pushed away the person who used to trust him the most. But now it seemed that Pang Xiao had never really trusted him at all. He had memorized every detail of how he used Pang Xiao, but he had always pretended to be ignorant of it. He was like a patient wolf that had been staring at its prey and chasing after it. When the time was right, he would show his fangs. Now he couldn't touch Pang Xiao at all. He couldn't balance him, let alone control him. It was impossible for him to become Pang Xiao's trusted aide. Perhaps this trusted aide had always been self-proclaimed. Jing Pei sighed and left. Pang Xiao looked at Jing Pei's back. After a while, he withdrew his gaze and closed his eyes to rest. Sure enough, Huzi managed to get some useful information from Zhao Yueshui. Zhao Yueshui was a soft bag who appeared to be tough on the outside but was actually timid on the inside. After being interrogated, Zhao Yueshui wished that he could die quickly. Huzi then fulfilled his wish and went to reply to Pang Xiao. Wang Yi, that eunuch, confessed everything. Yes. Wang Yi guessed correctly. Li Guanwen did mention to Zhao Yueshui in private that when Your Majesty invited your mother, grandfather, and grandmother into the palace for a short stay, he ordered the Empress to pay attention to what they said. He wanted to know some of your thoughts. That's to be expected. It's not easy to get my mother to talk. The Emperor will make his next move. Pang Xiao played with the horsewhip in his hand and said, since that's the case, the battle here should end quickly. I'm worried that something will happen to my mother and the others. Huzi heard this and nodded heavily in agreement. Pang Xiao focused on thinking about tactics for 2 days. It wasn't that he didn't have the ability to win. It was just that the siege was weak, and the supply line was long. Dezhou was far away, and after taking over the mess in Beiji, the treasury was very empty. The emperor was very strict with him and didn't give him silver rice. The supplies were not timely, and the Duke of Dinghua avoided the battle in Dian and closed the city gates. He couldn't feed his soldiers, so how could he stop them from stealing food? It was the same for the soldiers of Yan dynasty who were guarding outside Great Yan City. If they couldn't eat, they could only steal. In the long run, the people would be the ones to suffer. Pang Shao only wanted to end the battle as soon as possible. Chapter 265. Dian Luingshi, the prefect of Baochang, sent 30,000 mercenaries to request Emperor Yuankong to move the capital to Baochang to build a new capital. Emperor Yuankong refused and dismissed the petition. Luingshi rebelled and appointed his relative Yuqi Shujia as the emperor of Dian. He changed the name of the dynasty to Kaiyuan, and Luingshi was named as the regent. All the southern provinces and counties responded to the Kaiyuan emperor. Dian lost most of its land, and later Yan controlled the waterways. Luingshi's grain was stolen. Huzi finished reading the secret report in a low voice. He clicked his tongue and said, "This Luingshi is too daring." He failed to request to move the capital, so he elected an emperor. He even stole the grain that Jingdu collected and took care of the waterways. Won't Jingdu and the surrounding cities be starved of grain? Pang Shao nodded thoughtfully. This is a chaotic world. So, such people are bound to exist. This Luingshi is quite a scheming person. His actions are extremely disadvantageous for us. Why? Huzi asked curiously. The later Yan cut off the Dian's grain. Isn't it the perfect time for us to attack the city? That's right. However, my initial focus was on the entire Dian. After Luingshi's actions, the Dian was split in half. In the past, as long as we took Jingdu, the Dian would be ours. Now that we've taken Jingdu, there's still a later Yan. Pang Shao stood up and paced around. Our national treasury is also hard to support. If we only took Jingdu and controlled the Yuqi Yen, we could still grit our teeth and hold on. But now, even if we take down the capital, we can only capture the ones in the capital. Only the former Yen dynasty will be destroyed. I'm afraid this is not good. Huzi thought about it and understood. This Lu guy really knows how to pick a time. We can't care that much. Let's take Jingdu first. Even if the later Yen dynasty has the word Yen, the Dian will still fall at the hands of Dezhou. Exactly. Now that the capital has become an isolated island without food, it won't last much longer. Huzi was in high spirits. We have to hurry. Pang Shao walked to the map and carefully studied the countermeasures. He had to end this war as soon as possible, because Qin Yining was in the middle of the capital, which was about to run out of food. He didn't want her to starve and suffer. At this moment, Jingdo City was in chaos. The court had just auctioned off a large number of idle jobs to improve the status of the merchants. During this period of time, provisions had been continuously transported into the capital. The common people had not been happy for more than a few days before news came that the provisions on the road had been robbed and that the later Yan had established a dynasty in Baochang. The citizens of Jingdu fell into an incomparable panic. The capital of the Dian dynasty was the capital, and the emperor was Emperor Yuankong. What was that later Yan? This was nothing more than a farce by the traitors. It was just an excuse to steal food from the people of the capital and the garrison. The panicked people filled the Yamen and Xuanzu temple's gates, wanting to find someone to give them an explanation. However, this time, both the Yamen and Xuanzu temple's gates were tightly shut. The people went to the grain stores to buy food, but all of the grain stores were closed and hung signs saying they were closed. Even the granaries of Jingdo were surrounded by layers of guards. The people excitedly charged through the streets and returned home in disappointment. After a few days, some people began to take their families and leave Jingdo. However, after 3 days, the outer city gates were heavily guarded. Everyone who entered or left the city had to go through strict checks. If anyone wanted to leave Jingdo with their families, they were ordered to be sent back. Someone had a conflict with the garrison and shouted, "Jingdo is about to be taken." We commoners have nothing to eat or drink. Are we waiting to die here? We want to go to the south and join the later yen. Before this person could finish shouting, he was dragged away by the garrison. His pants were pulled down and he was beaten 40 times. He was beaten until he was gasping for air. His wife and children cried as they carried him back into the city. This kind of situation happened at every gate in the outer city. While the people were panicking, they were also dissatisfied with the imperial court. They couldn't protect them and didn't allow them to escape. No wonder some people said that the Dain dynasty deserved to be destroyed. At this time, Yu Yen was in a terrible fix. He rushed into retired emperor's bedchamber in large strides and said to his face, "Father Emperor. Yuchi Shujia has declared himself the emperor and turned the south of Baochang to the coast into his territory. He has established a later Yen dynasty. Father, if you still refuse to tell us the whereabouts of the silver, our Dain will really be destroyed." The Emperor Emeritus lay on his side on the bed and leisurely smoked a water pipe. He inhaled and exhaled clouds and smoke with his eyes closed. "You are the Emperor of Dain. Whether the country is destroyed or not, it's up to you. What does it have to do with me?" Yu Yen looked at the Emperor Emeritus in disbelief. "Father, don't you have any feelings for this country? After all, you were once the master of Great Yen. What's the use of you being greedy for such a large sum of silver? Do you still expect to go out and establish a dynasty? How much silver can a person use in a lifetime? Do you still want to enjoy it for yourself? Can you be at ease with your conscience? Taking out this large sum of money to preserve Dain is the right thing to do. TSK. Even if the country is destroyed, I won't be the emperor. Why should I be anxious? Don't bother me again. Get out." The Emperor Emeritus took another puff of his water pipe and waved his hand at Yu Yen as if he was shooing away a fly. Yu Yen was so angry that his brain buzzed and his vision turned black. If it weren't for Eunuch Lu's quick reflexes, Yu Yen would have fallen to the ground in anger. This was his imperial father. This was the real reason why his father abdicated the throne for him. It wasn't because of his talent, but because there was no other candidate. It wasn't because his father really wanted to abdicate the throne, but because his father didn't want to be the emperor of a destroyed country. He wanted him to take the blame. He couldn't beat or scold him. He couldn't argue or persuade him. Yu Yen walked down the street in a daze and looked at the blue sky. His eyes were full of desolation and despair. Could it be that the heavens wanted the Dain to be destroyed? "Say, should I agree to move the capital?" Yu Yen asked Eunuch Lu beside him. Eunuch Lu hurriedly said, "Your Majesty, if you agree to move the capital, you might be ambushed once you reach Baochang. That Lu Angsher doesn't have good intentions. Maybe he doesn't want you to move the capital, but wants to trick you. He wants to be the master of Dain." Yu Yen smiled bitterly and said, "How could I not know? That's why I refused at the beginning. But if I agree, maybe the Dain will be fine. Maybe I won't have to be the emperor of a destroyed country. The history books won't record me in such an unbearable manner." Eunuch Lu lowered his head. These words weren't something that an eunuch like him could say. At this moment, a guard rushed in and reported, "Your Majesty. The Tiger Army has launched a general attack. Although Duke Ongwa has closed the city gates and refused to meet them, the Tiger Army is coming fiercely and has surrounded the capital from all sides." When Yu Yen heard this, his face turned pale. He looked up to the sky and roared, "The heavens want me to die, the heavens want me to die." While Qin Huayuan was helping Duke Ongwa, Li Mian, defend the city, Qin Yining gathered everyone in the family Qin in Ci Shao Garden and announced his decision. Chapter 266. Qin Yining said in a low voice with a grave expression, right now, the situation outside is very tense. Just now, Master Zhong sent someone to tell me that the capital has already been surrounded by Dezhou's soldiers. Previously, our soldiers were guarding the outer city gates and didn't allow the commoners to go out. Now, our people are scared back into the city and are guarding the city gates tightly. Even if we want to let the commoners out, we can't. When the entire family heard this, they were so nervous that their faces turned pale. They suddenly felt like dark clouds were pressing down on the city, and a building was about to collapse. What should we do? Isn't this country going to be destroyed? The old madam was so scared that tears welled up in her eyes. Mammy Qin hurriedly handed over a handkerchief to wipe the old madam's tears. Second madam said, Sister E, if that's really the case, we should guard the courtyard to the death. If we want to move, where will we move to? Qin Yining said, Second aunt, what we should do now is not to guard the courtyard to the death, but to leave this place. Think about it, now that the city gates have been sealed, the provisions in the city will probably be supplied to the soldiers on the front lines first. Even so, we still have nearly 320,000 soldiers left. How much of the provisions have we consumed? The commoners' situation is even worse than the soldiers. They can't afford to buy provisions, and they can't escape the city gates. If His Majesty can't come up with a concrete solution, I'm afraid that it will soon lead to a mass uprising. If the commoners turn into a mob, think about it. Where will they rush to first? The granary? The government? Or the wealthy families in the capital? This is too scary. The Sun Clan's daughter clenched her handkerchief with trembling hands. Our family still has guards. 2 fists can't fight 4 hands. Guards are also useless. Qin Yining pursed his lips and said, My father is a famous official, and I'm also following the imperial edict to cultivate. Our family's target is too high. If the mob rushes in, we won't be able to escape. Besides, there's another layer of consideration. Qin Yining looked at the old madam, second madam, and the Sun Clan. He said in a low voice, Our family doesn't have much provisions left. If we guard here, not only will we have to face the mob's looting and revenge, what will we do after the provisions run out? Soon, we won't be able to buy food in the city. Heavens! Old Madam was so frightened that she started crying. There's a wolf in front and a tiger in the back. How can we live like this? This group of goddamn idiots, the old fatuous ruler hid the silver and didn't buy food for everyone. Wasn't it my son who thought of a way to solve the food problem? Not only are they ungrateful, they even want to take revenge on us. The members of the Sun Clan and Second Madam were so frightened that they started sobbing. Miss Eight and Qin Huining were already in tears. Han's second young mistress was only 3 months pregnant, and at this moment, she was so frightened that she started retching, causing everyone to be nervous. Qin Yining hurriedly comforted them and said, That's why I said we should quickly pack up our things before things get chaotic. Take the useful and valuable items and follow me to Mount Chongqun. They all looked at Qin Yining, their eyes filled with fear at the unknown future. Qin Yining said, I raised a lot of refugees in my garden on Mount Chongqun. Does everyone still remember? I have been using Zhao Yun Agency's money to provide food for them. They are grateful to me. Everyone, follow me. Those refugees in Ningyuan will definitely protect us from being attacked by the mob. The most important thing is that once we run out of food, we won't be able to buy food anywhere. We can still rely on the mountain to eat. Fortunately, it's not winter now. We can hunt in the mountain, dig for wild vegetables, fish in the river, and catch birds in the trees. We won't starve to death. Speaking up to here, Qin Yining relaxed and laughed, everyone can rest assured. I have lived like this on the mountain for 6 years. I am very skilled at hunting and catching birds. I can even feed our whole family. I will definitely not let everyone starve to death. Everyone was sobbing as they looked at Qin Yining, who was smiling optimistically. For the first time, they truly pitied him. They had been living under the protection of the family Qin. They had been living a carefree life. When they heard that they wouldn't be able to buy food in the city, they panicked and didn't know how to make a living. However, Qin Yining had to face this kind of hardship when he was 8 years old. He didn't have food or water. He had to survive on the mountain alone. That kind of bitter life lasted for 6 years. It took up almost half of his young life, and the most precious thing was that he didn't let himself be defeated by the difficulties. Instead, he survived and grew up to be a smart and tenacious girl. The members of the Sun clan hugged Qin Yining and sobbed. "Sister Yi, my good child, my good child." Qin Yining hugged the members of the Sun clan and didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he comforted, "Mother, don't cry. To be honest, if our family goes to the mountain to make a living, our chances of survival will be very high. We have many people, and we can take care of each other. We also have the protection and support of the people in Ningyuan. We have many people and strength. We won't starve to death. At least we won't have no one to talk to, right?" After hearing the last sentence, the members of the Sun clan felt even sadder. Not only did their precious daughter have to survive alone in the deep mountains, but she also lived alone for 6 years. She didn't even have anyone to talk to. The members of the Sun clan hugged Qin Yining and cried to their heart's content. Old Madam and the others couldn't help but feel sad for Qin Yining. Even more so, they were afraid that they would have to live this kind of inhumane life. Qin Yining comforted his mother and Old Madam. Before he could stop them from crying, Second Master, Third Master, Qin Yu, and Qin Han also returned. When they saw the womenfolk hugging each other and crying, they thought that something big had happened. After hearing Qin Yining's explanation, they heaved a sigh of relief. Second Master said, "Sister Yi and eldest brother are indeed father and son." Eldest brother also said the same thing and told us to come back quickly. Taking advantage of the fact that the city hasn't become hopelessly chaotic, we should quickly pack up and go to Changchun Mountain to seek refuge with the refugees that Sister Yi is raising. The commoners will remember Sister Yi's kindness. Other places won't care about this, but those refugees will definitely protect our family. After hearing Qin Huayuan's words, Old Madam no longer hesitated and immediately said, "Since we are going to escape, let's release the newly bought servants. We don't need their ransom money. If they follow us, we won't be able to raise so many people, right?" However, Qin Yining shook his head. Even if we release them, how can they find new jobs in this kind of world? If they don't have a job, won't they starve to death? Let's bring them up the mountain. Even if they have to eat chaff and swallow vegetables, at least they have a way to survive. It doesn't make sense that our family Qin can coexist peacefully with the refugees on the mountain, but we can't tolerate our own servants who have served us for so long. Sister Yi is right. Let's go together as a family. Second Master also said, "Our family Qin can't do such a heartless thing. If this spread out, how can eldest brother keep a foothold in the army? Don't forget, those guards are also people. They also have relatives in the city. Who knows which one of their relatives is in our family? It's better not to cause any complications." Hearing Qin Yining and Second Master's words, Old Madam's face and ears turned red. She awkwardly waved her hand and said, "All right, all right, all right. I'll listen to you. This old woman has become muddle-headed. Don't pay attention to me." This was the first time that Old Madam had said such self-deprecating words to admit defeat. Qin Yining and Second Master couldn't help but look at each other and let out a sigh of relief in their hearts. At this critical juncture, it wasn't appropriate to cause any more trouble. If Old Madam was obstinate in going about things the wrong way, they would have to waste their time trying to make peace. There would only be benefits and no harm if old Madam was no longer obstinate. Everyone quickly gathered their family members and packed their luggage. Qin Yining specially instructed everyone, lock up the valuables that aren't easy to move and put them in the cellar. As for the rest of the furniture and decorations, don't think about leaving them behind. Bring some practical clothes. Not only summer clothes, but also autumn and winter clothes. If this war crosses into the new year, we still have to spend the winter on the mountain. The entire family went to prepare with worry. They also dismissed the craftsmen who were in charge of renovating the back residence. Everyone from each branch in courtyard gathered together to have a small meeting in low voices. When it was midnight, second master had already taken care of the night patrols. Family Qin's family brought their servants and drove a carriage out of the Marquis of Anping's estate, which had long been reduced to ruins, towards the outer city. Qin Yining, Ji Yun, Qiu Lu, Bing Tang, the Sun clan, and Mother Jean all anxiously sat in a large carriage. The Sun clan's daughter couldn't stop crying. Mother Jean consoled her in a low voice from the side. Bing Tang and Qiu Lu, who had been affected by the Sun clan, were also on the verge of tears. Qin Yining laughed and said, "Mother, don't be sad. In one's life, misfortune and fortune always depend on each other. There are 3 ups and downs until one grows old. Don't worry, even if we can't live in luxury, your daughter will definitely not let you starve." Sun clan's daughter shook her head. "I'm worried about your father, your grandmother, and your aunt." Qin Yining laughed. "You don't have to worry about that. Father is in the army, so naturally, he won't be the first to starve. Moreover, with father's intelligence, he won't let himself be at a disadvantage. Grandmother, you don't have to worry either. I think that grandmother will definitely find a way to bring the entire family to Baoqiang or the coastal area." Sun clan's daughter thought about it. Qin Yining's words made sense. She took a few deep breaths before saying, "You're right. They'll be fine. As long as they're alive, there will be a chance to see them again." "That's right. Mother, you just have to take good care of your body. Your daughter will take good care of you." Qin Yining held Sun clan's hand and shook it affectionately. Sun clan's daughter smiled with relief and tears in her eyes. She held Qin Yining's hand tightly in her own. Mount Changchun was located in the outer city of the capital. It was 40 li away from the inner city, and there was still some distance between it and the southern city gate of the outer city. It was backed by Mount Changchun, and there was even a spring on the mountain. It was a good place to live in seclusion and recuperate. Because this place was occupied by the imperial family, there were very few people around, and the common people didn't dare to come here easily. Therefore, Qin Yining's family members were allowed to go up the mountain without any obstructions. Master Zhong had been waiting in front of the gate for a long time with a few people on the mountain. Seeing Qin Yining help Sun clan's daughter out of the carriage, Master Zhong hurriedly led people to greet her. "Boss, you're here." Behind Master Zhong were a tall middle-aged man, a woman in her early 20s who was dressed in men's clothing, and an old man in his 70s who was wearing an old scholar's robe. When they saw Qin Yining, they knelt down and kowtowed. "Greetings, benefactor." Chapter 267. Qin Yining went to help the old man up. "Mr. and I, please get up. Brother Lu, Sister Zhou, you don't need me to help you up, right?" I wouldn't dare. When I see my benefactor, I naturally have to salute." Old Ni bowed again. Ni Liping was over 70 years old. When he first came to the mountain, he was already terminally ill. Qin Yining didn't give up on the elderly and the children, and helped him overcome that obstacle. Scholar Ni's words were reasonable. These days, he was like the village chief of Ning Garden. He also organized a few literate people to teach the children how to read. He had a lot of prestige on the mountain. Yes, I wouldn't dare, I wouldn't dare. The middle-aged man also bowed. Kowtowing is a must. If it wasn't for my benefactor's help, Lu Dahan wouldn't be here today. Lu Dahan was 32 years old. He had studied in his early years, but because he wasn't smart, he spent all his family's money and didn't make any progress in his studies. He could only make a living by farming. When he fled with his family, his wife and daughter died on the way. When he went up the mountain, he carried his sick mother. Madame Lu was also very sick, and it was Bing Tang who personally treated her. Lu Dahan's gratitude to Qin Yining couldn't be described with words. However, when they heard Lu Dahan say, "I wouldn't dare," the people who heard the news couldn't help but laugh. The young woman in men's clothing kicked Lu Dahan. "You uncouth man, why are you learning from Mr. and I? Are you waiting for your benefactor to come and help you?" This shrewish woman had a bit of Sun Ernyang's temperament. Her surname was Lu, and her name was Zhou. She was a widow and had a lot of appeal among women. She was born a hunter and was good at hunting in the mountains. With these skills, many men were convinced by her. Seeing that Lu Dahan was kicked by Miss Zhou again, the onlookers laughed. The family Qin people standing behind Qin Yining were shocked by the spirit of the refugees in Ning Garden. When they came, they thought that the people living here would be a group of beggars. Starving beggars must be like tigers and wolves. They would protect their own little chance of survival because they were in a competitive relationship with each other. Whoever grabbed food would live, and whoever didn't would die. How could they be willing to let outsiders in? But now, although these people's clothes were a little tattered, they were all very clean. Moreover, they all had smiles on their faces and were full of kindness. When they looked at the Qin Yining, their respectful attitude was so obvious that the family Qin people couldn't help but be shocked. Master Zhong stood beside the matriarch and the rest and said in a low voice, "Master has always been providing for these people. He gave them jobs, gave them food, treated their illnesses, and let the children study. Master didn't ask them to go out and become refugees. He didn't let them starve or die in the drought. He also didn't abandon any elderly or children. You don't know how great of a thing Master has done." When the family Qin people heard this, the shock in their hearts was indescribable. "Everyone, please come in. We heard that our benefactor's family is coming, so we have already tidied up the best house." Miss Zhou greeted them with a smile. Qin Yining said, "How can we do that? Let's follow the old rules. The best house is reserved for the elderly and children. We'll just follow the crowd. Benefactor, don't be so serious with us. Your family can get used to living in the same place." Qin Yining thought about it and felt that it was reasonable. They wouldn't be living on the mountain for a day. It wouldn't be too late to settle down first and then distribute them slowly. Qin Yining smiled and went to help the matriarch, then greeted the family members to come in. The family Qin people supported each other and walked into Ning Garden. At this time, the people of Ning Garden who had heard the news gathered in front of the door. When they saw people coming in, they neatly made way for them and smiled kindly at the family Qin people. Some people greeted Qin Yining loudly, and some people whispered, "This is our benefactor's family. We can't neglect them. It's Wisdom Panan's family. Is Wisdom Panan among them? Is that tall old master Wisdom Panan?" Someone pointed at second old master and asked. Then, a well-informed person said, "Wisdom Panan is guarding the capital now. He's a hero. Our benefactor's family is all good people. We have to take good care of them." Hearing the discussions of the people, the family Qin people finally understood that Qin Yining had done a lot of bad things outside. The matriarch even felt her face heat up. This was because she had complained about Qin Yining spending money to support people who had nothing to do with him. But looking at it now, wasn't this kind of good karma rewarded with good karma? Back then, Qin Yining had helped these people. Now that they were in trouble, there were immediately so many people who came to help them out of goodwill. They were all basking in Qin Yining's glory. Everyone sighed with emotion as they entered the courtyard. Ning Garden's tall walls were like a small village. There were built houses everywhere. The legendary rare flowers and trees had long been sold to support the people. They walked along a small path until they reached the magnificent building in the middle that looked like a celestial palace. Miss Jiu said, "The rooms on the second floor have been tidied up. Benefactor, please help the people in your residence settle down first." Qin Yining thought for a moment and didn't immediately decline. He only asked Master Zhong to help settle the people down while he led the family Qin people upstairs. "We're here to seek refuge. It's good that our family can gather together. Not to mention now, we still have to learn to work to support ourselves in the future. Let's just put up with it for a while." The matriarch wasn't used to it and didn't say anything. However, second old mistress said, "This is already very good. As long as the family is together, what's there to be discontent about?" Second old master smiled and glanced at second old mistress. In this way, the matriarch and Mammy Qin squeezed in with third old master and Qin Yu. Second old master and second old mistress shared a room with Qin Han and his wife. The Sun clan and Mother Jean shared a room with Qin Yining and the three maidservants. 8th young Miss and Qin Huining lived with the head maidservant next door to Qin Yining's room. At first, everyone wasn't used to it. There were mosquitoes on the mountain, and there were no rules like at home. They couldn't ask the maidservants to serve them. Besides sleeping, there were people talking everywhere. It was as noisy as a market. These people who lived like princes all year round felt uncomfortable. However, Qin Yining adapted well. Early in the morning, Qin Yining got up and washed up. She put on a coarse dress and tied her hair into a long braid. She brought Ji Yun, Bing Tang, and Qiu Lu downstairs to prepare breakfast. The large Ning garden was already bustling with activity. Seeing 4 beautiful young girls fetching water, many of the men glanced at them and then lowered their heads to avoid them, blushing furiously. Qin Yining and Ji Yun chopped firewood, Qiu Lu and Bing Tang washed rice and cooked rice. When they started the stove, Qin Yining didn't forget to chat and laugh with 9th young Miss and the other women. During this time, they also received salted vegetables and dried salted fish from the women. A group of children came back with fresh wild flowers and fruits. A little boy in patched clothes ran over with a red face. He stuffed a bunch of colorful wild flowers and a bunch of wild fruits wrapped in big leaves into Qin Yining's hands. Then, he turned around and ran away. Qin Yining couldn't help laughing out loud at his antics. Her tinkling laughter attracted everyone's attention. 9th young Miss laughed, "Li Go, you little brat. Why do you only know how to give flowers to your benefactor? Why don't you give one to me?" The 7-year-old Li Go stuck his tongue out at 9th young Miss, turned around, and ran away. On the second floor, old Madam looked at the scene downstairs through the window. She was deep in thought. Second Madam smiled and said to second old master, "Our niece isn't simple. As adults, we can't fall behind. Old master, let's change our clothes. We also need to go down and do something. We can't wait for others to serve us." For the latest novel updates, please visit the website. Chapter 268. Just as the family Qin people were gradually adapting to their new lives, the situation in the capital had already reached an extremely tense state. The Tiger Army had firmly guarded the several gates of the outer city and arranged for soldiers to patrol around. The people in the capital had no way to escape and had completely cut off all contact with the outside world. Not to mention that southern Yan's Luingshi controlled the waterways and blocked the food supply. Now, even without Luingshi, even if the retired emperor was willing to reveal the whereabouts of the huge sum of money, it would be difficult for the Yuchi Yen to sell food supplies. The limited food in the city had become an extremely precious thing. The Yuchi Yen took the lead to eat thin porridge and ordered that food supplies be given to the army first. However, the food had to pass through many people's hands and layers of skin were peeled off. In reality, the army didn't get much. Nearly a month and a half had passed. The Yuchi Yen and the Empress had lost more than 10 caddies of meat due to hunger, but many officials could still eat white rice. The soldiers on the front lines, on the other hand, were getting worse day by day. Now that the autumn tiger was running rampant, the soldiers were only provided 2 meals a day. Each meal was only given a woman's fist-sized, black, stone-like biscuit of mixed grain bran. Fuck his mother, is this fucking for humans to eat? A soldier guarding the city took a bite of the dry biscuit and almost broke half of his teeth. After chewing for a long time, he stretched his neck and swallowed the food in his mouth with a gulp. Be content, we still have biscuits to eat. The people in the city have already started digging wild vegetables and peeling off tree bark. It is said that many people have already starved to death. There are even people who eat the biscuits. The person who spoke took a small bite of the biscuit as if he was carefully tasting the taste of the food. After that, he drank a mouthful of cold water and carefully swallowed it. Hey, did you hear? Yesterday, Minister Lu's residence was also broken into. The people rushed in and didn't even look at the valuables. They only snatched the food. However, Minister Lu's residence also doesn't have much to eat. On the side, several people were talking at once. These officials are living more comfortably than the emperor. The emperor has been eating thin porridge for more than a month. The officials even have steamed buns at home. We don't eat well, but we won't starve to death. The people are suffering. The people of Dezhou have surrounded the capital like an iron bucket. They are trying to trap us inside the city. I really don't know how we're going to fight this war. The people of Dezhou are too cruel. Initially, there were 350,000 Yen soldiers defending the city. Prince Ning had killed 30,000 of them. After handing them over to Dukan, there were only 300,000 left. The Tiger Army, on the other hand, suffered less than 1,000 casualties. The most shameful thing was that the Tiger Army was attacking the city, while they were defending it. With such a great disparity in combat strength, coupled with the panic caused by hunger and the cut-off of supplies, these soldiers couldn't even eat. They felt as if Yan Wangyi and the black and white impermanents were already standing beside them, grinning sinisterly. They looked down at the city walls and saw that the soldiers of the Zhou dynasty were also cooking. They could faintly smell the aroma of stewed meat. Although the Zhou dynasty's supply line was long, at least they were not surrounded. If they did not have enough food, they could still hunt, fish, dig up some wild vegetables, or plant some vegetables. Compared to the trapped capital, the Tiger Army was much more comfortable. Smelling the faint aroma of stewed meat below the city walls, the soldiers began to salivate. The tasteless and hard pancakes were even harder to swallow. At this moment, the sound of footsteps came from the steps. Immediately, someone greeted, Duke, Grand Preceptor Qin. They immediately straightened their backs. They saw Dukan, who was dressed in golden armor and holding a tasseled helmet, walk over. Half a body behind him was Qin Huayuan, who was dressed in a light green Confucian robe. His face was much thinner than before. Behind Qin Huayuan, there was an extremely beautiful manservant and a middle-aged man who was his personal attendant. Everyone hurriedly saluted. Dukan waved his hand and stood at the city gates, looking down. What he saw was an endless stretch of military camps. The Tiger Army's commander's flag fluttered in the wind. The golden tiger on the flag bared its fangs, as if it would pounce down at any moment and devour people. Dukan felt his legs go soft when he saw this scene. When he truly fought against Pang Shao, he saw the Tiger Army's individual combat ability of 1 against 10. He also saw Pang Zhao's demonic talent in arranging troops. Dukan originally thought that his military advisor was famous for being resourceful. With the ability of Wise Panin, he was able to scheme and kill Pang Zhongjing. How could he not be able to defeat Pang Zhongjing's son now? However, in reality, the battle between the two of them was truly a match for each other, a match between a general and a talent. The Tiger Army had few people, but they could fight 1 against 10. They were at a disadvantage when it came to sieging the city. The Dayan dynasty had many people, but their combat strength was weak and disorganized. However, they were at a disadvantage when it came to defending the city. Based on the game between Qin Huaiyuan and Pang Shao, the 320,000 troops that were originally handed over to Dukan should have been more than 300,000 now. However, after Dukan avoided battle for a period of time, he fell for Pang Zhao's trap and was lured out of the city. He was trapped in a valley on the west side of the city for a day and a night. At that time, if not for Qin Huaiyuan's timely rescue, Dukan wouldn't have been able to return, let alone the 20,000 soldiers he brought out. Dukan trembled with fear when he recalled the scene that day. From then on, he would rather die than open the city gates to fight. No matter how the enemy shouted and cursed, he pretended not to hear. Thinking of this, Dukan's entire body trembled. He pointed at Dezhou's military camp, which was not far from the city gates, and said with a heavy expression, "How do we fight this?" Qin Huaiyuan stood with his hands behind his back. His gaze was deep. He knew in his heart that no matter how they fought, Dayan was an arrow at the end of its flight. If there was enough food, even if there were only 30,000 people defending the city, he was confident that he could hold off the 100,000 troops of the Tiger Army. He could directly wear down the Tiger Army until they ran out of food and had no choice but to retreat. However, there was no food in the city. The soldiers risked their lives and fought on the battlefield for a full meal. Now that they couldn't even afford to fill their stomachs, could they rely on making empty promises to the soldiers all day long so that they wouldn't starve? Would they be able to fill their stomachs just by thinking about serving the court? There were people in the city who starved to death every day. Under starvation, the common people could also turn into mobs. Which of the large families in the capital had not been invaded by mobs? Some of them had their families broken up, while others had fled in panic. However, robbing these was far from enough for the common people to fill their stomachs. If they couldn't eat wild vegetables, they could still eat tree bark. When all the tree bark was removed, there were still grass roots. However, the capital was only so big. If all the grass roots were eaten, what would happen if there was nothing left to eat? Then only people would be left to eat each other. The common people were like this when they were anxious. What about these soldiers? He was afraid that when the time came, before the soldiers could eat each other, they would start a rebellion. Qin Huaiyuan lowered his head. Thinking about the chaos in the city, thinking about the emperor who was so hungry that he walked like he was floating, thinking about his family who ate wild vegetables to fill their stomachs, a sense of powerlessness once again swept through his body. Dezhou didn't need to expend much effort. As long as they surrounded them for another half a month, the capital would collapse on its own. Cannibalism would be enough to destroy the country. Qin Huaiyuan closed his eyes. Immediately, his chest felt stuffy. He felt dizzy and his vision blurred. His body swayed and he fell down. Marquis. Chao Yuqing noticed that Qin Huaiyuan's body was swaying and hurriedly supported him. Together with Qi Tai, they slowly laid Qin Huaiyuan flat on the ground. Dukan was also shocked. He hurriedly said, "Could it be that Grand Preceptor Qin is dizzy from hunger?" quickly bring some water and some food. The soldiers who had just complained that the pancakes were hard to swallow also felt sad. Even Grand Preceptor Qin had fainted from hunger. It seemed that they really were going to run out of food. Qin Huayuan was helped down the city gate tower by Chao Yuqing and Qi Tai. At the foot of the city gate tower, in De Zhou's barracks not far away, Pang Xiao put away the monocular. He carefully put it through the silver chain and hung it on his waist. He furrowed his brows in worry. Huzi asked curiously, "Master, what did you see?" "We've already trapped the capital for 43 days. "That's right." Huzi sat cross-legged on the ground next to Pang Xiao and said, "It seems that the capital is almost at the end of its rope. On such a hot day, the common people are trapped in a city hungry. It would be strange if they didn't go crazy." Pang Xiao's brows furrowed even tighter. So, she must also be hungry. As Pang Xiao spoke, he slowly lowered his head and grabbed his hair with both hands. Huzi finally understood what Pang Xiao was thinking. However, after thinking about it, that was indeed the case. There were so many people in the capital, and there were no supplies. Even if they ate everything that could be eaten, a large number of people would starve to death. Under these circumstances, Qin Yining was a weak girl who had not recovered from her injuries and needed to rest. Would she be able to make it through? Huzi only dared to think this in his heart. He definitely did not dare to say it out loud in front of Wang Yi. He could only change the topic. "Wang Yi, should we continue cooking the meat soup? Why don't we let the brothers drink some first?" Actually, the Tiger Army deliberately cooked meat soup every day under the city gate to let the Yan dynasty people smell it. This was also a way for Pang Xiao to shake the Dayan people's hearts. He did this to make the other side unable to understand the true situation of the Tiger Army supplies. Secondly, he could shake the hearts of the Yan dynasty people. To let the starving people watch the enemy eat meat every day, the mental torture, temptation, and suppression was not something that could be calculated. However, in reality, the Tiger Army supplies did indeed have a gap. They only had the advantage of freedom compared to the Yan dynasty people. At the very least, they could go further and think of a way. They would not be trapped in the city and starve to death like the people in the capital. Pang Xiao lowered his head and was silent for a long time before saying, "Boyle, this battle must end quickly. If we continue to surround them, this king is afraid." Pang Xiao didn't say anything further. However, there was a resolute look in his sharp eyes. After standing up and pacing for a while, Pang Xiao called Huzi in a low voice and ordered, "Think of a way to send a message to the Marquis of Anping. Tell him that this king wants to meet him in secret. You can arrange the details." Huzi was startled when he heard this. Then, he nodded with a serious expression and quickly retreated. Pang Xiao looked at the closed gates of the capital not far away with his hands behind his back. His heart was so anxious that it was about to grow wings and fly to Qin Yining's side. His beloved woman must be suffering right now, but the worst thing was that he was the one who caused her suffering. However, because of his identity, this battle had to continue. This was the helplessness of being born in a chaotic world. At this time, the person Pang Xiao was worried about was squatting in front of the stove and cooking a large pot of dark brown wild vegetable soup with Miss Jo. To read a novel, please visit